Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well this morning. Please give me just 1 second to make sure all the audio stuff seems to be working on my end. And it does look like it is. Okay, that's good. That's not always the case, so that's good. So, we got a big stream ahead of us today. We are finally going to be finishing up with Mushoku Tensei, or at least everything that's out so far. And it's a big deal because that's what I started streaming with. So, we're going to have to, after this, wait until season 3. Actually, not just wait until season 3 is out. I'm going to wait until season 3 is, or at least if they're doing a part 1 and part 2 like they did with season 1 and 2. I'm going to wait until season 1 part 1 is out before it's completely out, or at least will be out by the time I get to it. So, yeah, we're not going to be watching it immediately when it comes out. And also, I think it's just the right thing to do to give it a little bit of time to cook on its own. Because even though I don't think I'm necessarily a replacement for watching the show, because, I mean, who wants to make their first viewing of a show with somebody who's pausing and talking for 5 times the length of the video? So, but even so, probably a good idea to let it, get some viewership on its own without touching. Hey, Amir, welcome. So, yeah. So this is going to be our last Mushoku Tensei anime stream for quite some time. So, and since I think season 3 is coming out sometime in 2026. I'm not sure 100%. I haven't really been keeping up with it. I'm probably going to check out the trailer on my own time at some point just because I'm curious. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I do have a bit of a cough this morning. I think that's just because I woke up like a half hour ago, so it should be it should clear up on its own before too long. If not, yeah, sucks, but we'll deal with it. So, oh, I realized I forgot to open up Epic Pen. Okay, I guess you're popping up on that monitor then. Yeah, excuse me. Let me just do that. I don't know. It's always something that I forget to open up because, I mean, you guys might not realize it, but especially since I'm multi-streaming, there's like, oh, hey, Alan, welcome. So yeah, since I'm multi-streaming, there's like a dozen different things I have to get, I have to do to get each of these big streams started, especially, including, like changing the title of all 3 platforms, changing the thumbnail on YouTube, doing all this stuff. So, I mean, there's nothing too crazy. It's just there's a lot of things. I always end up forgetting at least one. And today I forgot to start up Epic Pen. And actually, let me real quickly. I think I'm going to actually put a poll in the YouTube chat to see what's. I don't know if I can. I don't know how long this poll is going to run for because it is just not letting me. Select a duration. So let's see. Yeah. Let's see. And one more. Okay, so I put a poll in. Okay, so it looks like I can end the poll manually. Okay. So I'm gonna keep a poll up in the YouTube chat as far as what you guys want to do next. So, I mean, I know I've been taking suggestions for the past couple weeks of what anyone wants to do, but this way, people who don't want to chat are also able to have their voices heard without having to, without having to actually kind of just speak up. Because I know I am a perpetual lurker as well. I understand not wanting to say anything in the chat itself, which is so anybody who so throughout the stream if you guys have any opinions. And it's not going to be a determinative vote, but I'll take it into consideration when deciding what we do from next week on. So, okay, let's get started with Mushoku Tensei Season 2, Episode 22. I am excited about this. I know what's going to be happening in these 3 episodes because I've read the light novels. I am very, very excited to see how the adaptation goes.
この先いるな。
どうするパウロ、まだ余裕はあるが一旦戻るってのも手だぜ。
いや、進む。それぞれの装備の確認をしよ
う。了解。
ルディ、私のスクロール何個か持っておきますか？
そうですね。じゃあ治癒魔術をいくつか。
はい。
One thing I do like how Mushoku Tensei has, which I am a little bit annoyed that they haven't done it explicitly. But there's a number of indicators of how Rudy's healing magic is just not as good as his other magic. And in the light novels, they do really lean into it a little bit more, where they mention that he has some trouble with some of the complex healing magic, that he cannot silent cast healing magic. And even though they never really say that in the anime, I do like the things like, oh yeah, give me the healing magic scrolls, do this, or they mentioned that Sylphie is really good at healing magic, that kind of thing. And numbers, thank you for following. Sorry, I'm not gonna say all the numbers themselves, but I appreciate the follow regardless. And yeah, that's okay, Alan. Things, real life is more important than this stream, trust me.
ありがとうございます。
どんなガーディアンがいるのかは分かりませんが、こちらの戦力は十分です。ルディがそのスクロールを使うことのないよう全力で援護します。
お願いします。どうにも俺はビビり癖があるので。
はい、背中は任せてくだ
And
さい。
that's funny.
よし。
And it's also funny seeing Rudy say, oh yeah, I spook easily. Because he actually probably believes that. I've mentioned this a lot over the course of this anime, but one of Rudy's consistent patterns is that he has a very low self-esteem. Even as his self-esteem improves, it actually improves at a slower rate than his actual genuine virtues do. So he starts to have a better view of himself, but it's always worse than the reality for the most part. It's multifaceted. There's certain areas where he's better than others, and he views himself differently in different contexts, that kind of thing. Of course, there's going to be nuance to it, but he always generally views himself as worse than the people around him view him. And so, even though he definitely does not spook easily, he's actually hardened himself quite a bit over the years. But he probably actually does believe, because of the times he has felt a lot of fear, he probably feels like that's kind of defining for him, which is interesting.
全員準備はいいか。ルディ。
何でしょうか。
この状況でこんなことを言うのも悪いと思うんだがな。
じゃあ言わないでください。
お。
決戦前に大事なことを言わせるもんじゃない。そういうのは帰ってからでいいのだ。
And I will say, actually, oh, and by the way, I'm gonna say, anybody who doesn't know what happens in the next couple episodes, I know I usually kind of hold off on anything spoilery, but that's mostly just for stuff that's past the point the anime has gotten. So big things do happen in these couple episodes, and I will be talking about them, especially since there's a lot of stuff leading up to it. One thing I like about... good morning, Thomas. So, I really like this bit of misdirection they're doing here. And this kind of ties into something I was saying, I believe I said it last week, or it may have been the week before. One of the interesting things I noticed about Mushoku Tensei when I was reading the light novels is that it's surprisingly few important characters die. Like, only a handful. And even then, most of the characters that do die are actually enemies. Like people that is killed in... yes, I am, Thomas. I think it's been working out, so that's what I'm going to be doing from now on. Unless I have like a good reason to do something different. So not many characters in Mushoku Tensei die. And at this point, unless I'm completely blanking on something, I don't think there's actually been like a major character death yet. Like, there's been characters we know who have died on and off screen, but for the most part, like, nobody who's like central to the main cast has actually lost their life. And as much as we're not like, and we're actually pretty close to like halfway through the entire story. So that's pretty significant, especially given how lethal the world is. So the viewer is kind of primed without even realizing it to kind of assume that everyone's going to make it through. And they're following a lot of the tropes of, you know, somebody who has their doubts and somebody who has their reassurances. And you kind of assume, just based on the framing of everything, that once again, everyone's going to make it through. I 100% agree, Amir. That was savage, and I actually kind of fucking love it. So yeah. But again, and they're also following tropes that assume that things are going to work out. Like, the way that Rudy is talking, it makes more sense just from a outside vacuum perspective that everyone is going to survive this. And the fact that it doesn't is going to be a huge shift. And I vaguely remember how the light novels did this this fight scene. I'm curious to see if how the anime is going to do it. One thing I would not be surprised is if they go for another big tonal shift where they, I don't know. Well, let's just see it, because I'm basically just talking out my ass at this point. I want to see what they actually do. And once again, I also, this is not entirely relevant to what they're doing right this second, but I do want to mention it because I don't think there's going to be a better point to. I do really like labyrinths in Mushoku Tensei. I think they are such a cool world-building element. And I love how they essentially are an exercise for Rifujin to figure out how they can have an RPG dungeon in a way that actually makes sense in context. So they have, and if you really look at it, they have all these video gamey elements to them that actually have logical explanations. The fact that they're somewhat random, that you know they kind of pop up. They got monsters coalescing. That all has to do with mana. How mana changes everything. How it warps everything. How monsters are attracted to the mana and they get infused with more mana. And dungeons and labyrinths get stronger as people and monsters die, and the labyrinth absorbs their mana. How gear gets infused with the mana and gains random effects, so you get an RPG RNG loot system. And now they have a boss portal to the boss room where they fight the Guardian, which is the boss of the dungeon, who is protecting the crystal, which is at the heart of the dungeon, which is what essentially turns the dungeon into a labyrinth. I think that's really cool. And it's really a shame that this is the only significant labyrinth to appear in the series. Other labyrinths are mentioned throughout the rest of the series, but this is the only one that there's actually ever like a serious part of the story, which I think is a shame because I think they are such a cool element to the world. Oh, gotta skip that. Is it gonna let me skip? I guess it's not gonna let me skip. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, and it started out almost like with the world building stuff. The video gamey elements of Mushoku Tensei started out as almost a joke. Like, not quite, but the whole point early on was that it wasn't that the magic itself in the world was actually video gamey. It's more that Rudy, through his otaku lens, kind of interpreted everything in video game terms. So the fact that they actually made the labyrinths actually video gamey is kind of hilarious to me. Ooh, I love this music choice here. Oh, and I definitely like the how the planning all falls apart just because Paul gets wrapped up in his emotions, and he is an ultimately emotional guy. We've seen this all throughout the series, how everything he does is so informed by his emotions. He gets completely overwhelmed by them. He's not unlike Rudy in that regard, and that's another thing that people who really pay attention will notice, is that Paul and Rudy have a lot of similarities, not just on the surface, but really deep down, and the anime does tend to kind of emphasize that, not just in their behavior, like what Rifujin put in the story, but even in their appearance. They have a lot of similarities, like the eye color. They have the mole in the same place. They wear their hair the same way. Again, there's a lot of parallels between Rudy and Paul, and that's one thing that Paul and Rudy are alike in, that when emotions really get at them, their brain turns off, and that, you see, Paul just completely broke the plan, and that is going to cause problems. Okay, that's a cool visual. And I actually really love the design of this. I actually really love the design of the Hydra. I don't remember 100% how the visuals were described in the books, but I don't know what I was imagining either. But it's really cool design. I love the crystals, giving it kind of the blue tint with the red eyes. Like it's fucking awesome. And also, I think also having a Hydra is a great choice for what this boss is and what purpose it serves in the story overall. Because you can have great moments like this of somewhat triumph, like, Paul literally just cut one of his heads off. And that, usually in most combat scenarios, cutting somebody's head off would be an end to the fight. You win after that point. Hydra, not so much, but it lets you feel a sense of victory and let you feel like things are being done, major damage is being dealt, even though we all, at this point, know that, things aren't exactly going to go that way. And also, you get to see that an initial show of dominance by the party. Okay. And that's also pretty cool to see that Tall Hand is like Roxy, able to shorten his incantations to have powerful spells with, relatively little speaking. And it makes sense because he's a dwarf. His affinity school is Earth. And the sound design is also really good.
あの音だ。あの甲高い音が響くと魔術が無効化される。どうする？続行か？一旦逃げるか？俺は何をすべきだ？
And one thing I also really like is how Rudy, in these moments, we see how much he is improved. I mean, this is the first time we've seen him in a serious, dangerous situation in a very long time. At least a long time in universe. It was, towards the beginning of the season of season 2, part 2, is the last time he was in anything even resembling real danger. And so it's been like a couple years since that point. And we get to see now that he's in another dangerous situation, how much his mentality and everything about him has changed since that time. And he's still like freaking out a little bit. He still is like not sure what to do. He's like almost a little bit decision paralyzed, but he also is becoming very observant. He immediately is able to pick up on the thing that's preventing their magic from being effective. He just doesn't really know how to act upon it. And it's interesting. Again, he's just become a lot different in just how he approaches things. He doesn't rely purely on instinct anymore. But I imagine he's also going to hyper-focus on his paralysis at the time. And hey, TV, welcome to the stream. Glad you could make it. And yep. Yeah, and that answers one of the questions that would be unasked in a lot of viewers or readers' minds. And I know this was something I was wondering going into this scene in the light novels is, you know, the Hydra from Greek mythology, which is where the Hydra came from. You know, when you cut off the heads, they don't stay cut off. So and that was something that you wonder. And it also undercuts the damage they already did. Like it's not so much of a victory anymore now that it does. Yeah, you're right, Thomas. Yeah. And also it actually does, it's another nice little bit of just structurally, I like what it's doing here, where the Hydra initially repels them, then they're gonna kind of regroup, come up with a strategy, and go in more confident than before. And then, of course, that's gonna end up kind of biting them in the ass. Not really biting them in the ass. They're still gonna win. It's just they're not gonna get out unscathed. And again, I will talk about it more when it actually happens. But again, the fact that there's so little death in this series, which is something I actually think may be a mistake long term, just because I don't know, it feels like a lot of stuff just happens without significant consequences. That being said, it's not like it's damaging to the story too much. It's still something I very much enjoy, and it also makes the deaths that do happen, it gives them a lot more weight since there's no like pervasive aura of death, at least among the main cast. Sure, and yeah, granted, plenty of people die who are not part of the main cast, but yeah.
あれはゼニスだ。間違いない。
ちょっと落ち着いてください。
悪かった。今は落ち着いている。
And we also see how Paul has changed during this, because, I mean, obviously he's very emotional at the moment. And he's kind of a little bit overwhelmed by everything he's going through. And we also have seen up to this point that the thing that really gets him going is protecting his family. That's like his big thing. And that's another parallel between him and Rudy. Like, again, they're honestly at this point more alike than different. But, you know, we saw him with Norn during one of the best sequences of the entire series. For the past however many years, it was been, so Rudy's like 16, 17? And the teleportation event happened when he was 10, so it's been 6 or 7 years. Paul has dedicated his entire existence to journeying the world and finding his family. And so again, this is like the biggest emotional stress Paul has been feeling in a long time. And it's actually it shows how much he's grown, even since we first saw him with in season 1 when he reunites with Rudy, is that he's now kind of able to center himself to a degree and not completely lose his shit. So even though he's, again, probably under some of the most stress he's ever been under. And yeah, I agree with you, Thomas. I have no idea why they didn't explain the battle aura. And I bet they're going to do it in season 3 when Rudy learns about the Laplace aspect. But still, I mean, they had the scene from the light novel where Badagati tells Rudy about battle aura, but then they just didn't include the explanation about battle aura, which is weird because it's such an important world building thing. It's very relevant. And also, I think it would also do a lot for the anime viewers to show that Rudy actually does have a very real non-character based weakness, where, granted, he does eventually overcome it for the most part, where he is able to compensate for most of his weaknesses with the magical armor, although it doesn't actually improve his reaction speed at all. But, you know, he does end up getting the speed and strength of somebody I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the smaller armor gets him up to Saint level physicality, and the big armor gets him up to like King or Emperor physicality, although for a shorter period of time. And yeah, pretty much. It's an Iron Man suit or a mech suit, depending on what you think inspired it more. Could have been a mix of both. But yeah, I think, again, the fact that we can see that he doesn't... the fact that we see that Rudy doesn't actually have the ability to do the enhanced physical things that people in this world can do, because he just can't channel his mana into his body unless he does it actively, which I also found that an interesting thing from the books for it to show that he actually does manage to manually create a battle aura, but it's just so inefficient and requires so much concentration that he's like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. So he could actually theoretically have a battle aura. It's just not practical for him because it's not natural. And I think that's just a cool thing to show that Rudy is actually very fragile. Like, if he gets hit, he's going the fuck down. And also, I think also would retroactively excite viewers who would realize, oh shit, all those things he did, that's not actually magic enhanced. A lot of that is just down to the training he's done to his body, and that's pretty cool. It shows that he's growing in the physical sense as well as in the emotional sense, where he's actually becoming, I mean, at this point, he is basically an athlete. So yeah, I think that was a big fumble from the anime.
生きてるかどうかなんて関係ねえだろが。
That's another great face.
そうですね。
やめろ、喧嘩は。ルディ、あそこにゼニスがいたんだぞ。お前の母さんが。なんでそんなに落ち着いていられる。
取り乱して何かが解決するんですか。
そうは言ってねえ。
確かに冷静すぎるかもしれない。でも、ゼニスとはあまりに接点がなかった。
Oh shit, jeez.
現状の整理をしましょう。
Sorry, I had to skip that. I thought we were past that point, but I guess no. Sorry, I had to skip that.
凄まじい再生能力。触れただけでエリナリーゼさんの防御を突破できるほどの攻撃力。そして石の中に閉じ込められている母さんは生きているかどうかもわ
Yeah,
から
and
ない。
actually, the more I think about it, the more I really do agree with Thomas about Elena Lise, because one thing I don't think they have shown just yet is that Elena Lise is a very, very capable warrior, like more so than most of the people we've met up to this point. And a lot of it is just down to the fact that she just has a lot of mana inside her, so she can just kind of do a bunch of crazy shit just naturally, but also the fact that she's had hundreds of years of practice and that she's been an adventurer for a very long time, she's been wandering for a very long time, and she's been having to defend herself from monsters for a very long time. So she's naturally gotten very good. And again, battle aura is another big thing that showcases that she has a lot of physicality that she has at her disposal. And it does show, again, it establishes the threat of the Hydra, again, by showing it can wound Elena Lise, which, again, and without that explanation of battle aura and an understanding that Elena Lise has a very powerful battle aura, you just don't know that that's such a big deal. You can probably infer that it's a pretty big deal, given that we have never seen Elena Lise struggle in any combat before, but it's still not as clear as I think it should be. And, I mean, and also, I don't know, I think that first fight, while I think it was a cool fight, I love how they got repelled pretty easily, I think it still could have done a little more to showcase just how dangerous this thing is. Like, so far, we haven't really seen it, aside from wounding Elena Lise, we haven't seen it actually, like, accomplish all that much, aside from repelling their initial attack, which, rather than showcasing that it's, this really dangerous, threatening thing, I feel like it gives off the impression more of, oh shit, it has these defenses we're not prepared for, it throws them off balance, and that's like, okay, we gotta regroup and strategize, not a case of, oh, this thing's strong, it's gonna fuck us up if we don't fuck off right now. Which is what I think the actuality of that situation was, and that's the feeling I got from the books.
んなことは俺だって分かってんだよ。母親を見つけた時の態度がそれかって言ってんだ。やめろ。親子喧嘩は宿に戻った時にやれ。ふざけやがって。
喧嘩はそこまで話し合いをしますわよ。
And I also like, I know it's a, I got kind of tangented on a different topic, but I also do really like how Rudy is thinking, again, due to his low self-esteem, is like, maybe I am just not caring enough about Zenith. Like, I never really had that much interactions with her, but like, she is somebody I should care about. Why am I not this upset? When I think is honestly, he's just kind of a little bit in shock right now, where he just hasn't fully processed his emotions, and they haven't completely overcome him like they would in previous times when other things happen. So he feels this calm, but it's not that he's not emotional. It's just that he doesn't he doesn't have this again, highly emotional reaction. He doesn't have this visceral feeling in his stomach that Paul clearly has. So he thinks there's something like wrong with him for not feeling that, even though he's, again, this is again how some people do react to stress, where they will kind of have this pseudo calmness about them, where it's not that they're actually calm, it's just that they're not full, their internal defensive mechanism for stress ends up being just kind of to blunt everything, and which will come back later actually, because that's kind of how that works. Some people just, whenever they're dealing with a really stressful situation, especially one that involves danger, they kind of blunt everything for the moment, and then it hits them afterwards, kind of like adrenaline, but like adrenaline for the mind.
大丈夫ですよ。
そうですか。
パウロとこんな風になるのは初めてじゃない。今回はちょっと歯車が狂っただけだ。
Yeah, and I also do like that moment as well, where he understands that this is not the first time they fought, but he also approaches it differently this time. So there's been 3 significant confrontations with Paul, this being the third. The first one was in early season 1, where Rudy is fighting with Paul over fighting that bully who was messing with Sylphie. And in that part, he was very self-centered. He was very manipulative. I don't think the anime showcased that as well as the books did, but Rudy his emotions got the better of him, and he went full manipulation mode and really pushed Paul's buttons and pushed things to an extent they shouldn't have been. And so that's how he approached that in their first confrontation. The second confrontation, Rudy was feeling bad about himself, but he was also just angry. Just in general, he just had a whole well of emotions that weren't even really directed at Paul, but he used it to kind of lash out at Paul, especially since he was, in one sense, excited to be able to share his experiences with Paul, only to have him get essentially rejected, get shot down, and that just kind of created an emotional well, because he was trying to connect with Paul, and then that was kind of what informed that second fight. And in this third fight, he's taken a completely different approach again, where this time he's not really angry at all. He understands that just things are going bad right now. Things are they're not very calm for Paul, and he doesn't hold it against him at all. And he's able to kind of think through everything logically. He's like, you know what? We fought before. We always gotten through it. And, we're going to be fine, which is also funny, because not only does it show that Rudy has kind of grown up a lot, where he no longer kind of feeds into Paul's manic personality at times, but it's also setting up that big tonal shift with the idea that we're going to get through this just like we always have. This is going to come to a resolution, and we're going to again have that big moment where everything works out, only for things to happen.
ゼニスさんの結晶化ですが、なんとかできると思います。
本当か？
私も今のゼニスと似たようなことになった人物を知っていますけど。
Oh, that's a fucking line. Holy shit. With hindsight, that is a crazy ass line. God damn.
ちゃんと今も生きていますわ。問題は例のガーディアン。私も初めて見る種類ですわ。
見りゃヒュドラってのはわかるが、あんな鱗を持ってる種なんて聞いたことねえ。しかも再生までしよった。
あれはおそらく マナタイトヒュドラです。本で読んだことがあります。
And I also do like, this is another thing I like about labyrinths, is that they show that the bigger the labyrinth, the more dangerous the guardian at the bottom. And this teleportation labyrinth is one that, if I'm remembering correctly, nobody or only a handful of people have ever even gotten to this point. And I don't. Actually, I think probably nobody has gotten to this point in history. So, despite, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people attempting it. So, this is obviously going to be a very powerful enemy. And that's a little cool little detail. And it makes you wonder about some of the other labyrinths in the world, which is another reason I'm kind of disappointed that we never see more of them. Especially, I know there's that one labyrinth that supposedly has like 20,000 floors. It's like, imagine seeing the boss at the end of that labyrinth. That would be cool as shit.
全身が魔力を吸収する鱗で覆われた悪魔の竜。てっきりおとぎ話だと思っていましたが、実在していたとは。
魔力を吸収ってことは、俺たちは奴にダメージを与えられないということですか？
本に書いてあったことが本当なら、ゼロ距離で打ち込めば通用するはずです。
And I will say that's also another really cool thing I like about this fight, where this is the first time Rudy's had to deal with this type of enemy, something that has a natural defense to his magical abilities, where he can't just overpower it, even though he actually probably does have the actual power and the skill to damage it. He just can't as long as it's protected by its scales. And yes, there's, point damage. Point blank is a thing, but like, this means he can't actually approach things in the same way that he always does, because it's his natural counter. And also, yeah, that's true. It's like the only is they took the wrong jump pad. That's true, Thomas. And also as far as I know, unless there's something going on that Refugee never just told people, seems like not very many people, aside from the people who wrote that book, are not very many people even got to that point, because the dungeon itself is so dangerous, which, again, the more dangerous the dungeon, the more dangerous the Guardian. So, yeah, and I also like how this does play into the video gaming elements a bit, where they're fighting a boss that happens to have a magic resistance, so you have to adjust your strategy for that. Again, that's like a video game. Sometimes, certain bosses will have certain characteristics about them that require you to take a different approach to it, where you can't just, magic DPS it, and you have to find other ways to hurt it.
しかしダメージを与えたところで再生しよる。
厄介ですわね。ヒュドラの首は火で炙れば再生しないと聞い。
And I also really like that, where this is one of those examples where Rudy, he's actually bringing that with his original world knowledge to this situation, because for those who don't know, in the original Greek myth with Heracles fighting the Hydra, the idea was that the Hydra, every time you cut off its head, 2 more grow in its place. So, of course, Heracles does the intelligent thing and cuts off its heads multiple times, and so now he's got a bigger problem to deal with. But eventually, the way he deals with it is, again, he cauterizes the stumps, and that stops the heads from growing back and allows him to finish it off for good. So Rudy is kind of channeling that, and it's a pretty well-known myth, so I imagine Rudy probably does know that from real-world mythology, and so he's like, hey, let's bring that here.
聞いたことがあります。
ギリシャ神話の
and he's literally going to say what I just said.
ヒュダラを切った後、切り口を松明で炙ると再生を阻止することができたらしい。所詮は神話、信憑性は薄いが。
なるほど。傷口を焼くか。
傷口なら鱗で魔術が弾かれる可能性も低いです。
試してみる価値はあるか。
Yeah. I always wondered also, I wonder how a Hydra fight would work, if anybody's seen the Disney Hercules movie, which it still annoys me that they call him Hercules, despite that being his Roman name, not his Greek name. But when he fought the Hydra in that movie, it wasn't that he cut the heads off and then burned it, although he did cut the heads off and the heads all grew. He actually crushed its body in that movie, so I'm curious. Yeah, okay, yeah. Good point, Amir. I mean, Yeah, that is a good point. I probably should have included the full context, but like, I don't know. I thought it was. I mean, the relevant point was about the heads being cut off. So yeah, I should have included the full context and explained that, but I don't know. I guess I just didn't think it was super relevant to the conversation. But yeah,
よしじゃあそれで
but
行っ
that
てみ
was
るか
probably wrong of me.
おいパウロそれでいいな
ああ
気のねえ返事だな分かってんのかあいつの首を切れるのはお前しかいねえんだぞ
パウロが首を落とし俺が即座に焼く場合によっては俺も危険な立ち位置になる
And I also like the unspoken thing that Paul is starting to kind of go internal. He's starting to kind of withdraw into himself. And that's, again, something that Rudy is very familiar with. And as I said, there's another parallel between the two where Paul is not usually like that, but he is kind of closing himself off. And Rudy probably, even if he doesn't consciously realize that, he probably just unconsciously can see that, oh, Paul's just not in a good place right now. And he's not in a good place in a way that I am very familiar with.
エリナリーゼ
But it is also, as much as there are a lot of parallels between Rudy and Paul, that's also one area that they are very different. Where when they get up against like impossible levels of stress, Paul just kind of blindly charges forward, whereas Rudy shuts down. So they have completely different reactions to being pushed to their breaking point.
タルハンドギスそれにロキシお前らには今まで世話をかけた本当に考えられないぐらいすげえ尽力をしてもらった
And I actually do really like this speech as well because it kind of touches on things that are strongly implied throughout the series but are never really fully explained. So the one thing we do know is that Paul left his old party on bad terms. He just from everything he said, he's like, yeah, you guys are probably still pissed at me. You probably don't want anything to do with me. Even Alinalise at one point had said, I have no desire to interact with Paul, but I'm going to help find his family because that's the right thing to do. So 3 of these people are there. So Alinalise, Tallhand, and Geese are part of his party, where he probably did something to fuck over Alinalise and Tallhand at some point. He probably just did something to piss him off. And so they have every reason to not be with him right now. And Geese, it could be a little different. He might have fucked him over, but Geese kind of approaches these things a little bit different. And so the fact that these 3 are willing to kind of put themselves in so much danger because of him, to help him is like something that really just gets at him because he probably feels like he doesn't deserve that. And then Roxy's a little bit different because he hasn't done anything bad to her, except maybe if you include the fact that they got separated earlier. So Roxy had a pretty shitty month while she was stuck in the labyrinth. But I don't know if that really connects. But Roxy has become a friend to Paul. Like they have like developed a connection, and he appreciates her there too, but in a different way. So the fact that he's like kind of having this moment is just like, he really is kind of shocked that people are really willing to come together for him and to help him in the ways that they are. And let me read that comment. It's reminiscent of the sync Paul had after episode 3 with Rudy, quiet and introspective, which he to what he perceives as a weak moment on his part. Yeah, exactly. That's a way that Paul is himself growing up as well, where while he never completely overcomes his tendency to kind of crack under extreme pressure, he does improve in his response to that, where he lashes out less than before and recovers on his own. Like at this point, he doesn't need Geese to kind of really give him a stern talking to. He just needs to kind of be, essentially have some sense emotionally knocked into him, where they just say, "Hey, cut the shit," and then he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm back." So, and it's interesting to see because like you always wonder what would Paul have been like if he made it to the end of the series. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's and that's also true. Yeah, it is funny to imagine, like, a lot of the connections that are made later on in the series make earlier interactions a lot funny. Like, again, the fact that I wonder if Roxy had ever just sat around thinking like, oh shit, I schlicked it to my in-laws. I don't know.
だったと思ってるけどそれもこれで終わりだゼニスを助けるか仮に助けられなくても俺の家族はみんな見つかったこれで最後なんだ力を貸してくれ
かしこまるなんてあなたらしくありませんわ
ここまで来て力を貸さんアホはおらんわい
And I also really like this response from Alinalise and Tallhand, showing that Paul really did grow up, not just from when we've seen him, but especially since they split up. Because I've said this before, and I will definitely die on this hill, that I think Paul's turning point was getting Zenith pregnant, where he became essentially a completely different person practically overnight, where as soon as he had some responsibility that he knew about thrust upon him, because, again, there's always a chance that one of the other women he fucked got pregnant and he just never knew about it, but as soon as the responsibility of fatherhood was thrust on him and he knew about it and he's like, oh shit, I don't want to be like my father, that was like a complete turning point, and he was his catalyst for growing substantially. So he was probably I'm willing to believe he was probably, not bad at heart, but like kind of a piece of shit.
パウロも随分と丸くなっちまったな
勝ちましょうこの戦いに勝てば
And regardless, even if he wasn't necessarily, he also was definitely not anywhere near as mature as he is. Is Soldat? Honestly, that would be feasible. I mean, realistically, probably not. But like Soldat being a half brother Rudy's there is a non-zero chance of it. Like again, we don't really know the exact extent of things, but I think we can surmise that protection isn't really a thing in this world unless you do have like magical birth control. But like, and Paul doesn't seem like the person who really, thinks with his upper head, especially at a young age. So there's definitely, just statistics will say that there's, a very real chance he ended up knocking up a girl without realizing it. And as an adventurer, he would have been probably gone by the time the girl realized she was pregnant. So, and he probably would have stepped up and done the right thing at that point because, becoming a father was such a big emotional thing for him that if he had realized, he probably would have kind of, course corrected at that point. But I don't know. It's an interesting question, one that never really gets answered. And hell, even in the books, that's something that Zenith says. It's like, yeah, there's a good chance you have some siblings out there that none of us know about.
ルディ、お前は本当に頼りになる息子だ。
そういうお世辞はヒュドラを倒した後にしましょう。
And also, this is another great scene because while everyone's kind of primed to assume that they're going to make it through this, we at this point, watching this stream, know that Paul does not make it through this. And so this provides an excellent closure to the two of their story arc. Even though, honestly, I would argue that their story arc is not actually finished until the... how can I say this without... without spoiling anything, because this happens pretty late in the series, and this is actually one of the moments I'm really, really excited to see. It's probably one of my most hyped moments of the series. Not as much as a Turning Point 4, but still very, very hype. Where let's see, the way I can put it is during the yeah, that's a good way to put it. The Ghost of Christmas Past, the hallucinations. That, I think that moment is where their arc really fully concludes, and that really has a full resolution. Because, I mean, this is a point where Rudy understands just that Paul is somebody he respects and accepts as his father. It goes from a place where they had their not quite antagonistic relationship, but they were more like rivals than anything else early on, where Paul definitely wanted to be a good father, wanted to have that fatherly influence, but he also wanted to show off. He also kind of wanted to one-up him a little bit. That, they were kind of button heads a little bit. And now this is the moment where Rudy Rudy doesn't quite realize it yet. He'll realize it after he dies, but Rudy at this point is just like, you know, he accepts Paul as his father and realizes, yeah, this is somebody I respect and care about. This is somebody who's important to me. This is like, he filled that role in my life. And Paul has his moment where he is proud of his son. He's like, despite all my faults, I managed to raise a good son. This is kind of my life's purpose. I have succeeded where I never thought I would. And so it's a great closure to that moment. And again, it's not until much later that Rudy really accepts the full breadth of just how much Paul meant to him, because he kind of repressed it. And I imagine also he probably, even after he recovers from the depression that he's going to feel shortly, he probably also suppressed a lot of his emotions surrounding Paul. And it's not because he just doesn't want to accept just how much he is hurting from Paul's death.
お世辞じゃねえ。本当にそう思ってる。俺はお前みたいに冷静にもなれねえ。アイディアも出せねえ。がむしゃらに突っ込むことしか考えてなかったバカだ。ダメな親父だ。息子のお手本には。
And then self-esteem issues for Paul. And as Paul grows up and matures, he becomes more aware of the areas where he is not particularly strong. Well, he's hyper aware of his weaknesses, but almost paradoxically, that's a marker for just how much he has grown. The fact that he can actually realize the areas that he's not as mature. Early Paul would have thought that he was the best, and so interestingly, the fact that he is becoming so self-conscious of his weaknesses is actually a display of maturity and strength in a sense.
言わせてもらう。親の言うべきことじゃねえとは思ってるけどな。いいか。
はい。
死んでも母さんを助けろ。
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing. I always liked that line because of how many mixed feelings it gives me. Because he even mentions this is not something you should say to your son, but he's basically saying, save your mother even at the cost of your life. And he probably doesn't really mean it in a sense. If it came down to it, he would probably, since fatherhood is such an important thing to Paul, it's if it really, really came down to it, he would probably choose Rudy's life over Zenith's. That's what I genuinely believe, because again, it wouldn't make sense with just how much being a father means to Paul. But I think in this moment, it's actually less of an impossible ask for him. And it's not like he's actually telling Rudy to lay down his life for his mother. I think it's more that it's a showcase of trust. He really trusts Rudy, not just as a person, which he absolutely does, but in his abilities as well, where he says, I think this is him saying, give it your all. And he said, even if it costs you everything, with the idea that it won't actually cost him everything, that there's no way Rudy can't do this. So yeah. Hi. And I agree with you, Thomas, that delivery is fucking insane. And I will say, a lot of these are actually making me very curious. I think Mushoku Tensei has a dub. I'm curious to see how the English voice actors sell these lines, because, I'll be honest, I don't really watch dubs at all, unless that's the only option, which is sometimes the case for older shows, and also Ghost Stories. Ghost Stories, you can't watch the subtitles. Actually, come to think of it, at some point, I want to watch the entirety of the Ghost Stories dub, and then I actually want to watch the subs to see how it compares, because I think that could be interesting. But also Pokemon. Pokemon is one show that, at least the original run of Pokemon. I haven't watched the modern stuff, but the original run, I have so much nostalgia for the dubs there. But so I don't watch dubs, so I don't really know if dubs have changed in the past 10, 15 years. But from what I remember, beyond the fact that I think just philosophically for me, I prefer to experience fiction as close to the original creation as possible, where I can't actually understand Japanese well enough to watch a show unaided or a show without a translation. So the closest I can get is subtitles, because that's the fewest liberties that can be taken from the original author's creation to my mind. So that's how I feel normally, but also beyond that, I always felt like anime dubs in general, there's certain certain trends within the dubbing industry that I just don't like. Characters oftentimes feel very inhuman just because of the delivery, and it's not even the voice actor's fault. There are a lot of great voice actors working in dubs. It's just the way they're told to deliver certain lines. Just it again. I mean, that's why we have kind of the stereotype of anime characters behaving and acting in a certain way. It's a lot of it is because that's how the dub deliveries are. And I understand that the original voice acting for a lot of anime is a little bit, it has its own flavor to it that is not, what would be relevant to native actual Japanese speech. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of the anime I've watched personally, the Japanese has a lot more realistic deliveries than the dubs do. And actually, before we get into this big scene, because I know it's coming up, I'm going to use the bathroom because I want to do it now so I don't interrupt myself later on. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm just double checking the audio real quick because I think at this point we all know that if I don't, that's when problems happen. And it looks like everything is good. So let me quickly read that chat message. The voice actors are directed to deliver it in too Japanese a way. It's natural for women to feminize their voices in Japanese, and it sounds natural as a result. It does not sound natural in English. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, and it is hard for me to really explain the full breadth of what that whole means to me. It's just that, again, there's just a way anime characters speak in English that is just, it's very distinct, so it's hard to not notice it. And yeah, so Batman the Animated Series and Disney's old animated films. Okay. And yeah, I haven't seen Howl's Moving Castle either subbed or dubbed, so I can't speak on that. But yeah, a lot of old actually a lot there's a good amount of Western animation that has good voice acting. And I think actually a lot of places are starting to take voice acting more seriously nowadays than they used to. And I think part of it was down to the fact that and at least in the United States, I don't know if it's the case in in other areas of the West, but in the United States, there's still kind of this idea that animation is meant to be for kids. And I think that's informing why there's so many TV shows, like Family Guy, South Park, and a million different kind of knockoffs of those two that they almost go extreme in the adult sense, where they have a lot of really raunchy jokes and that stuff. It's because we still have this perception of animation being for kids, so seeing all these adult oriented jokes is kind of enhances the absurdity of things. So I think that the fact that we view animation as for kids is why a lot of voice acting isn't taken seriously, or even if it is, it's a lot of times done in a cartoonish way, because that's the kind of show that works for kids. And a lot of kids media includes strange voices, because that's just the commonality, and kids do actually like that kind of thing. So I think that's slowly changing. I think we're starting to get more adult-oriented shows and TV and movies and stuff that is animated. And I will say also Pixar, I think, has been actually pretty good, because even though its movies are family-friendly, they tend to also be genuinely good on top of that. So we'll see good stuff coming more and more. So I'm curious as the voice acting becomes more serious in animation in general, I'm curious to see if that translates over to dub voice acting. And again, I'm not familiar with how dubs have been for the past 10, 15 years. So again, maybe what I want is already there and the dubs are actually decent nowadays. Who knows? But actually, based on what I've seen of other stuff, of stuff that's not anime, but like I watched, I remember I was hanging out with my sister, and this was not long after Squid Game came out for the first time, the original season. And we decided to watch it on Netflix. And it started out with, and my sister's not the biggest, I say she's not the biggest subtitle fan, but it's more like she always has subtitles on when she watches TV, but she also doesn't really like having to rely on them. So she watches any kind of thing dubbed. She mostly watches American stuff anyway, but when she watches something foreign, she watches it dubbed. So we started watching Squid Game dubbed, and the voice acting was so fucking awful. Like, genuinely, it felt like they got like high school students who had never done voice work before. The only thing good about it was the fact that the recording quality was good. But it was so awful that after like a few minutes, I'm like, Teresa, I can't fucking take this anymore. Can we change the language back to Korean? So yeah, and she was like, yeah, okay. Because even she realized that it was really shit. So if that's the case of one of like the biggest shows to come out in the past couple of years, got that level of dub voice acting, I can't imagine dub voice acting is taken very seriously in general.
しかしそれはパウロの覚悟であり、俺への信頼だ。
I mean, yeah, there's also some truth to that. A lot of stuff culturally has changed after World War II, and it was a major event in the lives of the entire population. So I can definitely understand that. I mean, beforehand, cartoons kind of tended to be family friendly, but not kid specific, where like the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck cartoons, we think of them as kids shows, but realistically, they were meant for people of all ages to watch. It's just that kids could watch it as well. And honestly, some of the jokes in the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, you can tell they weren't meant for kids.
なら俺はそれに応えるだけだ。ゼニスを助ける。その目的のためにパウロと意志を共にするのだ。
And I will say, another thing I do actually like about the labyrinths in Mushoku Tensei, how they're kind of going right back in to fight the Hydra, is that the one area where it's not video gamey is they don't really have the checkpoint system. Oh, hey, Bruce is here. How you doing, dude? I mean, I know we haven't like directly talked in a while, but it's good to see you. I mean, we're in the same Discord server, so we are, sharing a space, but like we haven't actually had like direct interactions in a while. But yeah, the one area where the Mushoku Tensei labyrinths aren't super video gamey is the fact that you can't just checkpoint right before a boss, where normally if you were playing an RPG, you would you get repelled by the boss. You're like, oh shit, better go back, better resupply, better come in with 100% everything, rest at the inn, that kind of thing. They can't really do that here. I think they have some sort of checkpoint system as well, because it seems like the further they go, the further they're able to get. But I could just be misremembering. Yeah, that's true, Amir. I also remember watching an old Warner Brothers short that was all about teaching soldiers to wear their gas masks. So again,
Yosh.
kids don't really need to have that information. And again, I always love the Mushoku Tensei battle music, and I love how they're incorporating the Rudy's future sight into the equation. And I know I've said it multiple times over multiple streams, but I will say, of all the ways that... Okay, so the way I kind of work when I'm reading a book is that I don't like have a movie playing in my head like a lot of people do. While I can actively picture things in my head, I don't have the I can't remember what the word for it is, where people can't actually see images in their head, or it's not sight, but it's like you can't form images in your head. I don't have that. I can do that perfectly well, but when I read, I don't automatically like create a visual for what I'm doing. It's kind of, I experience it, just the idea of it kind of, it's almost like its own sense. Yeah, aphantasia, that's the word. I do not have aphantasia, like to any degree whatsoever. But I don't picture like a movie scene in my head when I'm reading a book. That's just not how I process stories. So when it comes to what do I expect something to look like when it goes from text to a visual-based medium, I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't have a specific idea of what I was expecting in my head most of the time. I just have an idea, and sometimes I'll make a connection like, yeah, that's probably how I would imagine it, or that's not how I would imagine it. So a lot of times when I say, oh, I wasn't expecting that, there's not a specific thing I was expecting. However, one thing I did actually have an idea for in my head was how Rudy's demon eye would work, how the future sight would work, just based on the descriptions in the book of the how we can see almost like an after image of the future, essentially. And the way that Mushoku Tensei does it is pretty much exactly what I imagined. It really sells the fact that, he can see the future. It's a very powerful ability for him, but also it kind of is confusing. It's overwhelming. It can be like, it's hard to parse through all that information all at once. And also just visually, it looks exactly like what I imagined it looked like. So I always thought that was really cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Okay, Tom. That's interesting, Thomas. Yeah. I mean, for me, picturing stuff in my head has to kind of be usually an active thing, or it's something that has a very strong connection in my head. Like something just kind of reminds me of something, and then the image is conjured in my head. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably when I hear something like the word foot, it's for me, it's like it's not specific enough. So I can't like I don't automatically create a specific image in my head because there's a whole wide range of things that could be associated with the word foot. So, or not a wide range of things, but a wide range of appearances. So yeah, I don't know. It's always an interesting conversation, and I think that aphantasia is one of those things that fundamentally changes how people interact with fiction, especially text-based fiction. So yeah, it's one of those things I am not even close to knowledgeable enough on that subject to really speak on it, but it's something that's interesting. And that's cool, okay.
やはり接近してぶち込むしかないか。
予定通りですね。行けますか？
大丈夫です。
ルディ、俺の背中から離れるんじゃねえぞ。
And I will say this is another area where I think the Battle Aura conversation would have been important, because I think it would have shown that, hey, Rudy doesn't have a Battle Aura. He doesn't have any enhanced durability, any enhanced movement. He's just like a regular athletic guy at this point. So that heightened the tension of the scene in the books where, you know, like, oh, he's really putting himself in danger here. I mean, he's still putting himself in danger in this context, but you just don't get the full breadth of why it's so important to him. And also, in the books, he's knowingly putting himself in that kind of danger. Here, since he never had that conversation with Baragati, he doesn't know that he can't generate a battle aura. I will say, the imagery that I do imagine from Mushoku Tensei is, I think, very good. I still don't always like generate an actual image of stuff in my head, although I will say, actually, the fact that there are illustrations in the light novel that Shirataka has again just illustrated a lot of key moments from the story, that does actually kind of inform my internal sense of what this show is on what the books are on a visual level. But so again, I do just do this a little bit differently. I still, when I'm reading something, I don't picture it in my head. I just get a sense of what's going on. So yeah, it's hard to explain. Like, it's one of those things, like, I know what I'm trying to say, but I have no fucking idea how to say it. And honestly, this fight scene is great so far, actually. A lot of really cool really cool little subtle bits of camera work going on here. I love the ways the background and foreground are slowly how they're doing a lot of zooms, a lot of blurs, and of course the actual impact animations are like over the top and crazy. It's really good. Yeah, and again, another thing I love about this scene is that it does something that I mention it all the time. Mushoku Tensei loves doing this, the abrupt tonal shifts. And the purpose of a tonal shift, well, not the only purpose, but one of the purposes of a tonal shift is because by quickly going from one emotion to another, like to an opposite type of emotion, that really enhances the final result. So we see it both in both directions. Like, I think the quintessential example of it going from serious to funny would be when Roxy is leaving, and I absolutely love that they took the soliloquy from the books almost word for word in that section in the anime, where he's given this really heartfelt goodbye in his head where he's like, this person means a lot to me. This is someone who has helped me in ways she'll never understand. I'm so grateful. I'm a new person because of this. Oh yeah, and I stole her panties. Sorry about that. And that tonal shift makes the resulting joke so much more funny. And there are also serious moments too, where there's, you know, a lot of really, like, even the first fight with Paul, it starts out with a very happy moment of Rudy playing with Sylphie. They're having a great time. They play all day. They have fun. Rudy has his first friend. This is like so great for him. And then it immediately shifts to the next scene of Paul's fucking pissed. And then that, like, oh shit, what's going on? So they're doing that again here, where they have a plan and it's starting to work. Where, hey, they're cauterizing the wounds on the Hydra's neck and it's actually like stopping it from regenerating. We're gonna fucking do this. And then it's gonna kind of it's getting more and more triumphant as it goes. Paul's starting to smile. The music is getting more upbeat, major key, it's exciting. And then they're gonna do a complete tonal shift and just completely devastate you. Like, and honestly, the timing of how this fight scene is working as well is absolutely on point. Like again, it's hard to really, because I'm more of a text-based person. Like that's kind of where my knowledge base is. So it is hard for me to really articulate a lot of the things I'm noticing in the animation, because it's like I'm noticing things, but I don't know exactly how to describe it or what words to use. But like the timing of that one sequence here, let me go back a little bit. So yeah, okay, so yeah, here. He goes in, slashes it, and then when he slashes it, he lands. The shift happens. It's not like camera work, but it's almost like he slides out of the way. Rudy slides in and then hits it with a fireball. I feel like the timing of that sequence of impacts right there was just incredibly satisfying, just on a visceral level beyond what's actually happening. Just that it hits just like that feels really good to watch. The subtitles feel slightly out of sync. Like, not much, but like by like half a second, and that's a little weird. It's not that distracting, but it is a little distracting.
Rudy!
Okay, and I'm also really happy to finally see Tall Hand in action, where, I mean, I know from the books that he's a total badass, but we haven't really seen him do much. We got an idea that he's pretty competent based on the fact that he had such a short incantation for Earth Pillar, but yeah, I'm so excited that we actually get to finally see him get scrappy. And I love how the smoke is starting to fill the air near the Hydra. That's cool as well. And actually, that's another interesting thing. I think that since, Roxy's able to shorten her incantations so much, and it seems to not be limited to her water magic, which water is her affinity school. So she's better at water magic than anything else. But she's also shortening her healing incantations. Again, that seems like that's, from what I understand, that's not something Rudy can do. So she might actually be better at healing than Rudy as well. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, and that's true, Thomas. It might be to lulls. I mean, the way this fight scene has been working out, it's not like the actual chronological events are happening in lulls. It's just, but there are moments of it's peaking and dipping, peaking and dipping, peaking and dipping, where they'll show the action that's happening with Paul cutting off the heads and Rudy cauterizing the wounds, and then they'll move to something that happens like in between, where again, Tall Hand is knocked out of the fight temporarily, and Roxy runs up to heal him. It's not like the fight is lulling. It's just that they're temporarily kind of distancing themselves to deal with something else while the rest of the fighting is going on. And again, roller coastery types of pacing tends to work pretty well in a lot of combats, depending on what the author wants to do. There's so many ways you can do a fight scene, but having the constant ups and downs does actually enhance kind of the intensity of things by continually not letting you essentially get used to the high octane and making each little moment have a renewed impact. Again, it's not the only way to handle a fight scene, but it's an effective way to handle a fight scene. Okay, and this is where I love how this is where things start to turn, where oh shit, an unknown element just appeared. What's going on? Where up to this point, it was triumphant, essentially. Even though the fight was still going on, it was still right in the middle of the fight. If you don't know what's going to happen, you automatically have the sense that, hey, they're slowly whittling it down. They're going to win this. People are pretty much already internally celebrating, and then unknown element that throws that into question. I like that. And that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I also do really like how Rudy's not the only one that Rudy and Paul are not the only ones actually doing real work on it. And just showing that they have a plan, but they still need to rely on their allies, because again, that's a big thing Rudy needs to learn, is that the people around him make him stronger. So even though it's Paul's job to lop off the heads and Rudy's job to cauterize them, and Tall and Elinalise are mostly distraction and protection, and Roxy is mostly support. But when the time comes, they got to do their part as well, and again, just show that they can't rely on their own strengths for their plan. They have to accept help from those around them. It's not like a major theme of this particular combat, but it is an element. And also, I do love, this is another video gamey element, how the boss essentially has a second phase. It's great. And it's having its special attack. It's great. And they really do sell the intensity of this, of Rudy's magic combined with the Hydra's breath. It's really well done here. Oh, and that I say that the animation, just the little idle animation. It's not an idle animation. That's a video game thing. This is not a video game, but just the little subtle ways the Hydra is kind of shifting as Paul is running towards it. Honestly, just that makes the happy chemicals go in my head. And yes, Khan, I think your name is. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but yeah, I agree. Animation, very, very good. I know Season 1 generally had better animation, but the animation in this scene in particular is very, very good. And I also think, I also like the little unspoken element to this scene, where on top of the just all the fun action stuff, we see that Rudy and Paul are like really on the same level. They're just, with a word or two, they're able to communicate what their plans are and how to change things. I do think they probably should have had a scene where they really go over the plan in depth, because I think that's what the books did, where they actually had a bit where they really just sat down and strategized. I think it makes a lot more like having a pre-existing plan, going in, having their contingencies ready, their coordination would make a lot more sense that way, but it's still fine this way. And yeah, Thomas, I'll be honest, I don't remember the specific details of that, but I do remember kind of the gist of what you're saying. I just don't remember the specifics enough to really comment on it. Although, honestly, also, I would say that Rudy's not that much of a science nerd. I think it was more that he was intelligent, and I think he always kind of had a passion for learning in general. He just was so depressed he never really realized it. But he was able to pick up a general knowledge of a lot of different subjects just from casual interest. So, basic scientific principles are something he remembered because, it was something that temporarily interested him at one time. And that's the thing, and that's the idea is, again, one of Rudy's big weaknesses is that when things are overwhelming, he locks up. And usually it's a case of him shutting down in a period of safety, but I also really do love this is how Paul dies, because in this specific way, because on the one hand, it's something that Rudy is going to view as his fault, because it was his mistake that kind of changed things up, and Paul put himself in danger for his mistake. However, and at the same time, it also does a really great way of advancing the whole father-son thing they've got going on, where that's big theme of Paul's arc specifically is he had a shitty father. They left on bad terms. He always kind of regretted it. He knew that his father also regretted the animosity between them, and he uses that to fuel his desire to be a good father, and he eventually learns how to be a father and continually grows and changes and evolves as a father over the course of the series, and it culminates with him doing the ultimate fatherly thing of giving his life to protect his son. And that's like a great way of just concluding his arc. Like, just on, if you just take a step back and look at the thing in its entirety, that's like the perfect arc for a character whose story is about fatherhood. Like, that is, you don't really get better than that. And so it really does two things at once, and I think that's absolutely incredible. Like, one of the things I do often like about stories that are not like Mushoku Tensei, the ones that actually are a lot more lethal than Mushoku Tensei, where characters can die at any moment. Like, let's take like a really insane example, like The Walking Dead, where people die left and fucking right. I think I'm going to specifically talk about the comics more so than the show, but it applies to both. One of the things I liked about that, and this is in contrast to what Mushoku Tensei does, is a lot of times characters would die at moments you wouldn't expect, just from a narrative level, because it leaves their arcs completely incomplete, where they don't get their resolution. And that makes the world, that does a lot for the world building, makes everything feel more depressing, makes everything feel more deadly. You know that anyone could die at any time. It really enhances the tension of the series overall. That's one thing I usually like. I usually prefer that type of storytelling, but I also really like the way Mushoku Tensei actually uses this death to really put a cap on Paul's character, and like they finished everything they wanted to do with him specifically, like with him actually acting in as part of the world. They're not done with him completely, because again, Rudy's going to have his whole moment with the as you said, the Ghost of Christmas Past section, where that's when he really fully connects with what Paul meant to him, and he really fully understands just how much of a father Paul really was. But yeah, that once they got everything Paul needed to do as part of his story arc is done, that's when they kill him. And I think that's actually very, very effective for what they're trying to do here. And yes, I also agree. But the death flags were very, very like apparent, but also they were playing it off like they were red herrings. They were like a red herring of red herrings, where they were trying to convince you that it was not real and that they were actually going to make it through and everything was going to be fine. They were building up a lot of like positive emotions, a lot of triumph, only for that to get dashed away at the last moment. And even here, you kind of expect Paul to have kind of withstood that, because that's just how he's been up to this point. But I also think we have to understand, like, it's actually pretty relevant that Paul is, while he is a very, very skilled swordsman, you know, he has much more than the average person. He only in any single style caps out at advanced rank, which is probably not enough to really navigate this particular fight. Like, I feel like this is the type of fight that would almost like require somebody to be like really, really fucking good, like Saint King level, that kind of thing, to really properly navigate it. But and while again being advanced in 3 different styles is very impressive, it gives you a lot of additional options that wouldn't be available to a traditional swordsman. And also Paul has a ton of practical experience. It makes you realize that he's actually not that good in the grand scheme of things, at least from our perspective, because again, we're with Rudy just throughout the course of the series just happens to get acquainted with almost every powerful person in the whole thing. And yeah, that's also true. I think if Ghislaine was in this scene instead of Paul, they probably would have had no problems, honestly. But I actually do. Yeah, and again, that's also true, where he did utilize all 3 styles, because again, real life combat is not going to be the same as a training scenario. But I also think that Ghislaine is so much better at sword god style than Paul. She's probably able to utilize her advanced ability to fight in that style as a replacement for the things that Paul did in water and North god style. And even so, with North god style, that whole thing is adaptation and innovation. It's not like you don't utilize that type of thing in sword god or water god style. It's just that it's not defining like it is there. And I don't know. I don't think actually that's necessarily true. Ruijerd would also be a very useful ally here. And he would actually probably do pretty well, but I don't think he could actually kill it on its own. I think it's telling that it needs Rudy, who is at the very least Saint rank in like multiple styles. He's probably at the power level of King or Emperor rank in his magical power. Not if he, even though he hasn't cast the actual spells required to actually reach the rank. Roxy is a Water King who is at least advanced level in everything else, possibly Saint level in 1 or 2. And then there's Paul, who's advanced in all 3 swordplay styles. There's Elise, who we see she's both very powerful magically and very powerful as a warrior. We don't know exactly how much. We see Tallhand, who is able to shorten his incantations like Roxy, so he's a very competent earth mage, and also can kind of hold his own as a warrior as well. If all of these people can't beat this thing unscathed, it's I don't think a single, even though Ruijerd is around Emperor rank, even though there's no equivalent for spears, he is like, as a fighter, he's basically an Emperor. I don't think him alone could have actually done this fight. And that's all. I mean, that is true. But also, we can't forget that King level is so much higher than Advanced. Like, Saint is a pretty big jump on its own. King is a crazy level above that, where, I mean, if we go to the Sword Sanctum where Eris is training at this point in the story, she starts out, impressing everyone, and it's like, basically like the baseline is, okay, yeah, you're a Sword Saint. Let's go from there. That's almost like her starting point as far as her advanced training goes. So King is like a huge fucking deal. And again, there's only a handful of them in the world. So again, I think that it's one of those things where Sword King is just so much better than Sword Advanced Sword level. I think it actually goes a lot further than we think. Maybe. I mean, it's not impossible. We also don't entirely know what the Hydra does as far as its body, or how durable its body is, or again, if there would be another way to kill it. You just don't know. And that is fucking awesome. And if I'm remembering correctly, this is when Rudy first loses his arm, and that's actually something I love telling people who've never seen Mushoku Tensei or read the books. Where when I'm talking about some of the things like that happens throughout the story, if I want to say something kind of crazy without spoiling anything, I'll mention that Rudy loses an arm 3 times throughout the story, and that kind of makes people do a double take. They're like, the fuck? He loses his arm 3 times? Like, yeah, he gets better. But it's also, I also will have to acknowledge that it's really intense, because not only is this the first death we've seen, even though I don't think they've confirmed that it's a death yet explicitly, but you kind of know that it's a death. But it's also like the first like grievous wound that Rudy really feels that has like real consequences to it. Because granted, there was the one with Orsted earlier, and it was also a turning point, so that was a major thing as well. But he also was fully healed from that, like, immediately, like, within a minute or so before he died. So, even though it left emotional scars, I don't think it was as impactful on a physical level as this losing his arm is. And honestly, great death animation for the Hydra as well. Like, really sells the power and how it goes. Okay, only minor criticism. Yeah, he would be bleeding a lot more than that.
奇跡の天使よ、命の鼓動に天なる息吹を与えたまえ。天にいただきしたいよ。神なる御使いは赤を嫌う。光の海に舞い降りて純白の翼を広げよう。さすれば
and I actually I do really like that as well, that healing moment, that healing scene. Just again, it's like just a showcase of emotional resolve, how he's, I mean, let's be real, losing an arm would be like completely disabling to just about anyone. He doesn't have exactly any frame of reference for what that's like, so even though later he's able to actually cope with serious injuries fairly well, that's just because at that point he's fucking used to it. But again, it's actually a great showcase of where Rudy has gotten to, that he is able to heal himself in this scenario. And it's also a good showcase that even though he does end up shutting down after this, he does have his depressive spiral like he tends to do, it doesn't immediately hit him when Paul first dies. It's actually he actually is able to get shit done before he breaks down. Like, that's another way that Rudy's slowly starting to improve. And interestingly, Rudy's whole tendency to spiral when things get bad never actually goes away. It's even shown that, like, within like the last couple years of his life, and I'm not going to give any details, so no spoilers here, but he's still shown to kind of have that tendency where things go bad, he blames himself, and he shuts down for a while before somebody he loves pulls him out of it. So this is like a very persistent character flaw of Rudy's, and something that never goes away, and I do actually really like that. But yeah. And that's true. That's also another notable thing. It's the fact that they don't actually. This is the first time they had an injury. Not only that somebody died, but also he has an injury that is severe enough that healing magic that they have access to can't actually do anything about it. Because I'm pretty sure that's an Emperor rank spell that is required to regrow an arm, or any limb really. And even Sylphie, I think she's probably Saint or maybe even King level. She's probably like a Saint level healer, although I think she eventually, even though she never officially does it, I think she probably ends up with around the power level of a King tier healer, is my guess. I don't think it's ever explicitly explained. But so they never actually have anyone who, in this initial setting right here, that can actually heal that. So like this actually does have real consequences, even though he eventually does get the arm back. And this is where we're gonna have the and again, I love how even though he didn't, I was talking about how much of him just acting instead of shutting down was, he also, this is going to be the reveal of what the audience probably already realizes. Yeah. And I'm certain that Sylphie got at least to Saint level in healing, because she was always a better healer than Rudy, and I'm pretty sure Rudy eventually learned Saint level healing, just he wasn't able to do it silently. But like Sylphie's whole thing is that she's definitely better, and yeah, that is true. That's one of the flaws of the ranking system, and I'm not saying it's a flaw in Mushoku Tensei. It's an in-universe flaw, essentially. It's something that the systems that the inhabitants of that world created, is that with swordplay, with the exception of Saint tier being, for sword god style, being the Sword of Light. Saint is, swordplay ranks are mostly descriptive, like they're a measure of skill, and even though the higher ranks do kind of require a determination from an instructor generally, or for the highest level for beating the current god, but but mostly for the most part, it's a marker of skill, whereas in Magic, it's the highest level spell that you're able to cast, or that you have successfully cast, which is an imperfect thing, because you can get good enough to be well beyond a certain rank and just never have a chance to cast that spell. Again, if you never learn it, or you just never bother to do it, or hey, maybe if it's a case of fire magic, you're just never in a situation where you can safely do so. So again, it's very imperfect. So I think there are multiple characters who are probably stronger than their rank actually indicates. Like Rudy, I'm pretty sure he could be by the end of this series. He could probably be an emperor in at least 2 different magical styles, possibly all attack styles. Almost certainly king level in every attack magic style, and the thing is, he just never ends up actually doing it. And Sylphie, I think, is the same case, where she is very, very skilled as a healer. She just never ends up casting the higher tier spells. And also, actually, come to think of it, healing would be a difficult magic style to really advance in just an official capacity, because if you don't encounter somebody who has a grievous enough wound to cast these higher level spells, when are you going to cast them? And man, that's a great reveal. Like, very visceral, even though it's less bloody than you'd think it would be. The fact that you see half of him there, it's just very, it's visceral without even having to be all that bloody. Yeah, and then that little smile at the very end just really sells it, because and again, that's like the perfect way to cap off his character arc, where he dies knowing that he saved his son and that his son is going to be okay. And that just brings him comfort in his final moments. That is the perfect way for Paul's arc to end. Hey, I mean, it's a great visual, honestly. So, and yeah, and I will say that's one thing Mushoku Tensei's anime adaptation does excel in. It really does great at the little visual bits of storytelling, the stuff that the books can't include. Because again, you can't have these little bits of just showing something and having it just have this great visual in your head, because, text just can't do that. And the complete lack of music is incredible here. I think it really sells the moment, especially with the shattering. The shattering of, well, it's crystal, but it's a glass shattering sound. But yeah, it very... The lack of music during what is otherwise a triumphant moment is really highlights just the numbness they feel at having lost Paul. Again, I really, really do like how they did this. I know I was talking about how I was very eager to see what they did with this fight scene and how this whole interaction played out in the adaptation, because it was such a big deal in the books. Honestly, there might be 1 or 2 little things I would have adjusted if I was the dictator of Mushoku Tensei, but this in particular I think was an excellent adaptation, absolutely incredible. And yes, I 100% agree with you, Bruce. Lack of music, when done well, really does hit hard. I pointed out a lot of times when I see it and it's done well. It is really an effective tool when it's used properly. Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, the death and the reaction afterward is so realistic, I think. It's a change from the niche of 5 minutes of final words in so many media. Yep, I definitely agree. That's one thing Mushoku Tensei does very well. It acknowledges a lot of genre tropes. It plays around with them, but ultimately decides to take a more human approach to it, where it's has fantastical elements, but there are real people at the center of it. And yeah. Paul's last words, damn, I'm so full of regrets. I don't want to die. There are so many things I wanted to do. Yeah, this moment, yeah, it's better than Rudy dying. Stay positive. Exactly. It's one of those things where as I said earlier, Paul essentially did the ultimate fatherly action of giving his life for his kids. And that is, that's why, even though not everything Paul wanted is complete, while there's still more he could have done, this is kind of the perfect cap off, because he kind of fulfilled his ultimate role as a father. And that's why it's the perfect way to conclude his character arc. Yeah, and again, even just little things like that with Roxy, that little head movement she has, what she's thinking without it having to be said, where she is upset, but she also realizes how upset Rudy must be, and she wants to comfort him, but has no idea how. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of what I think makes the following depressive spiral work really well in the books is that it's actually an error on his part. Not that he was facing something too strong, but that he kind of freezes up. And that's what puts him in the position where Paul has to save him. And so he kind of is able to internalize that because, saying it's his fault is a little bit mean, but also it kind of is his fault in a sense. And I think that highlights that because there actually are doing an error he made. Mickey, why are you meowing at the door? Okay, so yeah, my cat. I dosed her with some catnip earlier, so because she was going a little crazy this morning, so I don't want her to interrupt. But now she is staring at the door and occasionally meowing at it. Ooh, and I actually really love the visuals of with the music. I mean, the fact that every sound is actually muted, you have no words, no other sound effects, just the music accompanying the otherwise very positive looking visuals with. And one thing, Mushoku Tensei uses color a lot. It really does use color and lighting. The soft warm glow is used to highlight positive things because they came back technically triumphant. They won, they got Zenith back, and so the scene is like framed in that sense. And that's how their initial reaction is before Lilia and the others realize that Paul is dead. They're going to be happy because they made it out. They see Zenith. They're great. Things are good. And the fact that it's all muted with those string little pulses in the background really just highlight just how fucked in the head these people are. Like the main party is. It's great. And I imagine I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I imagine the color scheme is going to change once the Lilia and the others realize that Paul's not with them. When their expression changes, I imagine. Oh, and again, I love how she's the first one to realize something's off. Like you see her expression change, and then her expression changes. In sequence, they all change. That's really good. Ooh. That is really... This scene is really well done. Holy shit. Ooh, that was so good. Holy shit. I felt that more than most anything else this series has put out so far. Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, Thomas. The first thing you hear being Lilia comforting Rudy. And I think this hits me harder because one of the things I think is a big fumble with the series, the anime adaptation specifically. Because I still think that first scene with Lilia is something the anime should have adapted. Because it shows how stoic she was at the start, how much she suppressed her emotions, how just statuesque and robotic she was. And Rui completely changed that in her, made her open up to people, made her feel emotions again. And so that's why every moment of Lilia being emotional, being loving, being scared, it really is impactful because you know that this is something that she wasn't doing before. So the fact that her first reaction after clearly feeling tons of grief on her own, which that in itself is a pretty big deal. Her first thing is just a love and concern for Rudy, who she never really accepts her role as kind of his second mother, but she does fill that role very much so. She does give him the love that he needs, especially in this moment. And her first thought is to comfort him. That is absolutely beautiful. Man, this is honestly this sequence right here. I think that might have been one of the best, the most well executed parts of the entire series so far. Like, holy shit, I felt more in those few seconds than I think I have anywhere else. That's gonna stick with me. And also, that's one thing, again, that also ties into things that Rudy needs to learn is that, hey, you can rely on the people around you. You can lean on people when you need it. And granted, he does also still do his spiral, but like, it's a big deal that Lilia tells him, it's okay, you can rest now. Oh, and I actually love the robe getting tossed off with the torn area and the blood. Like, it's a great visual. Yeah, and yeah, and the blood there again on his shirt that he crashed on the bed without even changing his clothes. It's the start of his spiral. You don't necessarily realize it just yet, but it's just showing he doesn't care about anything anymore. He's kind of all in his own head. Very good. Yeah. Oh, and then the symbolism with the fire is great. Yeah. And yeah, because they cremated him. Yeah. Yeah, and the music is still going. Yeah, I don't know that they could. There was yeah, that was pretty much the perfect musical choice, I think. And yeah, Paul literally crumbling away in his hands. It's very overt symbolism here, but like I think the blunt force trauma approach to symbolism is pretty much is kind of what this scene really needs. I think that is the way to go. Subtlety, I think, would not have been the right choice here. And yep, and again, we're back to no music, which is yeah.
もしかしたらこのまま奥様おはようございます
And yeah, and I do also love this moment here because I mean I imagine they're gonna do what I'm about to say in the anime, as far as like thematic and tone and stuff like that goes, where they're kind of she's almost like the silver lining of the scene where yes they took a terrible loss, but at least they've got Zenith back, and then we're gonna it's like almost kind of blunting the edge of that moment there, and then until we realize another shift back into depressing when we see her actual condition. And I mean, and they don't know that it's a little more complicated than they're making it out to be, but Zenith is what they, for all intents and purposes, disabled. Like they think she is not capable of thought, even though that's not technically true. They have no way of knowing that at this point. And so that's going to kind of put a damper on even the slightly positive element of this whole interaction. And I will say this is another reason I actually really like the changes to Zenith's character in the anime, because in the books she was definitely, she was very warm and loving, a very motherly character, but she was also kind of refined, reserved, calm, able to kind of compose herself because she was a noble. That was her thing. That like to her, just kind of being that refined person was just normal for her. The fact that she was all bubbly and happy in the anime, I think really does do a lot to sell just how different she is now, how she's kind of just blunted and just practically comatose, essentially. She's not comatose, catatonic would probably be a better way of saying it. Like that contrast is much more highlighted in the anime version of Zenith. So that's actually one change I do like a lot. And I know that with additional context from what happens later in the story, we know that she is actually feeling things very strongly at this moment. She is so happy to see Rudy again. And from her perspective, they are just kind of having a normal reunion. But yeah, to them, they're like just not happy. Yeah, I do agree with you, Thomas. But I also think the highlight of this moment was that last little mention that last little scene of Rudy's face changing, and like you could see that that's where he completely cracks. That I think is the point of that scene, and I think that facial expression kind of saved the scene essentially. So yeah, man, that was really fucking good. One of the best episodes of the series so far, I think. Like absolutely great. I just need to jump right to the next one. I am not fucking stopping. Okay, so yeah, they're back in the real world. So again, once Rudy is again in his depressive spiral, he goes back to the place where he's thinking of his old self. Not unlike the beginning of the end of season 1, where he's, again, whenever Rudy's in a bad place, it ties back to his old life, all the regrets he feels. Again, these are things that he never fully escapes. Like he does grow in many ways, and his conclusion to his character arc ultimately is a positive one, but he's never able to fully escape the things that are dragging him down, the things that are hurting him. Yeah, it's just a persistent feature. It's just a consistent trauma of his.
あの時の両親は俺を心配していたのだろうか。彼らは死ぬ間際、俺のことをどう思っていたのだろうか。
And I also do really like that, the idea of like, what did my parents' last moments? What were they like? And connecting them to the fact that Paul's last moments were of him. Like, it's. Granted, the situation is different because because Rudy's original parents died suddenly, and not in a situation where they thought they'd even be in danger, as opposed to Paul dying against a fight that he knew was going to be dangerous. So, but still, the connection is kind of an obvious one to make, and Rudy's going to make it.
真実はわからない。そして俺は葬式にも出ず、両親の骨も拾わず、何をしていたのだろうか。
And again, that's another thing. Rudy just consistently regretting the person he used to be.
両親を愛してなかった。
Yeah.
でもせめて葬式ぐらいは出ておけばよかったんじゃないか。
Yeah. And that's another thing I actually do really like about Rudy as he thinks of his older self now, where it's actually like he's so detached from who he used to be. He's actually genuinely confused by the way he's acting because that behavior is so alien to him nowadays. Like, current Rudy would never even entertain the notion of not going to a funeral like that. So he's like, why the fuck did I act that way? So it's actually, as much as it's, a showcase of Rudy being all depressed and sad and like really down on himself right now, it also is a big showcase of just how much he's grown, where he really isn't the same person anymore. Like, he is not the guy who died in episode 1.
死に顔ぐらい見ておけばよかったんじゃないか。
Yeah, and that's another common Rudyism. His low self-esteem, and he always blames everything on himself. Like,
お前の一番大切な相手じゃないか。
これから先どうすればいいんだ。
yeah, it's really good.
教えてくれよ、パウロ。
お前は本当に頼りになる息子だ。
Yeah, and I also do like that this is the first time Rudy really has like an opportunity to grieve anything, where he's been upset before, sure. And I don't think he ever really fully internalized that his original home was like the home in Buena Village was gone, that a lot of people he knew was dead, that people even in Eris's family, like Sauros, people he ended up growing to like, but they're dead. He didn't really fully grieve over that because he had his own shit he was dealing with. And now this is the first time he's like really grieving, and he's also grieving for everything else that he never did in the past. In particular, how his relationship with his original parents went. He's grieving that. He's also grieving Zenith. Like, it's all hitting him all at once, and I think this is a very great way of showcasing that without him really understanding that it's more than one thing, because Paul is kind of first and foremost in his mind, because he's the one who actually died.
俺は自分がパウロの子供じゃないと思っていたのに、パウロは俺の父親だったんだ。
And I will say once again, while it's not the only time we see him cry, like he's not always alone. He is oftentimes just by himself when he cries, and that's always just. And it's actually interesting. The only time we actually see him cry, well, okay, there's been 2 times we've seen him cry in somebody else's presence. That's with Soldat and with Sylphie, both of which were very pivotal moments for his character. But it's just like a constant thing. When Rudy's in a bad place, he cries when he's alone, like because he doesn't have anyone he feels like he can lean on. Because that's just how Rudy is. And actually, come to think of it, okay, I'm glad they didn't have the OP here. That would have fucking killed the tone of everything. Okay.
気分転換に私と出かけませんか？ほら、この街はまだまだ面白そうなものがあり
Yeah,
ますし。
that is what I've heard. I have heard that the anime did not really sell just how bad Rudy was or how long it's been, where he's completely neglecting himself. Like, yeah, they don't. That is what I've heard. So, I mean, so I imagine I'm going to mention it when it becomes relevant, but
先日のように
that doesn't mean they can't do the other
また一緒に見て
elements
回りませんか？
really well. I mean, I will say, granted, they do kind of. He does look a little gaunt in this picture, where that line right here does kind of look like a bit of a contour on his face, so that they are kind of showing him. Like, if they show his physical health deteriorating, like if they make him look really bad, I think that can at least partly make up for that.
そんな気分では。
And I'm not actually sure.
すいません。
Yeah, because I mean, I think the specifics of him actually starving himself are not necessarily needed, or the amount of time he is, but the point that he's been neglecting his health for a while is kind of what needs to be conveyed. If it manages to do that, I can kind of not necessarily give it a pass, but kind of understand it at least. Also, I am a little bit mixed on if I like the fact that Rudy is actually responding. Because on the one hand, it does show a little bit of emotional growth, because last time he was just completely silent. Although also it kind of makes it almost feel like it's not as serious as before. So again, I'm a little mixed on that he's actually responding to Roxy.
Paulo さんとゼニスさんのことは残念でした。私もブエナ村で一緒に暮らしていた時のことはよく覚えています。私にとって一番幸せな時期だったかもしれません。
Yeah, I do agree. One line probably would be good. Again, I'm just kind of inferring based on what I've heard, so I'm not really talking too much specifics yet. But yeah, I do think a line of like somebody just saying, it's been 2 weeks, or has he eaten yet? And it's like, or has he eaten today? And you could say, no, I couldn't get him to do it. Or just even having a like on the table next to him, you see some uneaten food, or an attempt to get him to eat. Like, I feel like you could actually do that pretty easily, like without much time taken away from everything else.
冒険者をしていると身近な人が死ぬことは珍しいことではありません。
And I also do really like this, how like Roxy is just really earnestly trying to comfort him, trying to help him, be there for him, and has no idea what to say to him. And realistically, there's probably nothing she could actually just physically say at the moment. Rudy just kind of needs somebody there to comfort him. It's not like it's not like she has the magic words to pull him out of it. And it's ultimately when she sleeps with him, that's kind of what pulls him out of it. But it's not the sex, it's the love and connection she shows to him, where she just kind of expresses it through sex.
辛さはわかります。私も経験がありますので。
嘘つかないでくださいよ。師匠は父さんも母さんも元気じゃないですか。
そうですね。最後に会ったのは数年前ですが、どちらも元気。
じゃあわかんないですよ。軽々しくわかるなんて言うなよ。
Yeah, and then that's, yeah.
気づいたんだ。やり直した気になって。
Okay. Yeah, like right here, he looks a lot more gaunt than he normally does. So, again, you can kind of infer, I mean, it's one of those things where you can attribute it just to he's in an emotionally bad state, so he's just kind of looks like shit because of it. Maybe he's disheveled, all that stuff, but also you can kind of get that his health is not quite 100% at the moment. Still, I think they probably could have done more.
うまくやれている気になって。でも大切な部分からは目を背けていたことに。家族との確執から目を背けて、また取り返しのつかない失敗を繰り返して。
Yeah. And I also like how Roxy just doesn't even react to Rudy lashing out at her. Because I think it's one of those things where she almost certainly realizes what's going on. She realizes that he's not actually angry at her. But again, she's also still completely lost as to what to do. So honestly, I like this moment for Roxy. It does actually show that what she's been building up towards has actually like reached somewhere where she is actually like an adult now. She is a more mature person. Which is, that was her whole thing, was growing up from being a child. That was her entire journey up to this point.
変われたと思っていた。でも結局何も変わっていなかったんだ。
ブエナ村での生活は本当に幸せでした。ルディはとても才能にあふれていましたし、パウロさんもゼニスさんも温かく接してくれました。あなたたちが私に家族の温かみを教えてくれたんです。私にとってパウロさんたちは第二の家族です。だからあなたと悲しみを分かち合いたいんです。
That is a beautiful line.
私は小さくて至らない師匠ですが、ルディよりも長く生きている分だけ感情です。持たれてくださっても構いません。辛いことでも。
And that's very adorable as well, because it does again lean to the stuff that Roxy does have low self-esteem in a similar way to Rudy, where she always looks down on herself. And that's one thing. It's constant contrast between how she views herself and how Rudy views her. Because he like absolutely idolizes her in many ways. So, there's always there's always cool story stuff going on with that. But also it just shows that she knows that she's in a position where, she can be the pillar that he needs. And she's also just expressing it. We have this connection. I don't want you to go through this alone. It's very, honestly, this dialogue is very, very good.
ルディ。大丈夫。
Okay, so okay, I think I see where the people have the issues with this, because again, like the fact that Rudy is in such a bad state and that he's been that way for a long time. Again, this almost kind of, you could be mistaken for thinking it's just like a couple days after we last saw them, even though we know if we've read the books that it's been almost 2 weeks. So yeah, I think the fact that it seems to move quicker in the anime than it did in the books is actually a big problem for why I understand why people didn't like this scene. Also, again, we don't know just how unhealthy Rudy is at the moment, how much he's really beating on himself. Again, we just don't get the sense of how bad it really is. And if they had sold that, I think this scene would have been better. And also just, I know there was a moment between Roxy and Elise where Elise, and actually this would be a great moment for Elise as well, because she knows, because there's just how she feels about Sylphie now, knowing that that's her granddaughter and how much she knows that Rudy and Sylphie care about each other, how important that is to them. When Elise kind of encourages her to sleep with Rudy, that is a big deal. Yeah, there's a lot of setup they could have done for this scene to make it all make sense like it did in the books, because in the books this was like almost a last resort for everyone involved, where it's not that the feelings weren't real with Roxy, but it was again it's like this was the last card they had to play, essentially.
私に任せてください。
Okay. All right, and yeah, okay. That transition was actually pretty good, about as good as a fade to black for that scene could have been, and yeah, and the lack of music also really does good. Okay, I mean, I might be misremembering just because it's been so long since I've read this particular part of the series, but I seem to remember Elena Elise having kind of encouraged this. And I definitely agree. I'm definitely a person who believes that adaptations should stand on their own. I don't think it's a case of you need to have read the book to get what this scene is going for, but I will say there's a lot that is not made that clear if you haven't read the books. So this is an area I do think they failed in adaptation. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, and I definitely think that if they adapt later scenes well, especially the way he reunites with Sylphie and how that whole interaction goes, if they manage to do that, like, it's something that I can kind of look past. Not that I can excuse it, but I can actually, like it doesn't necessarily damage the overall experience if the future scenes are also handled well. Okay. And that's cute.
ルディ。
おはようございます。
少しは気が晴れましたか？
はい。
Yeah, and it's also a big thing where, again, Rudy just feeling unconditional love is something that consistently heals him. Let's not forget that the sex scene with Sylphie is what healed him from Eris. And yeah, Roxy's able to pull him out of it. So thematically, it does really work. Okay, and that's a fair interpretation, Thomas. But
師匠、一つ変なことを聞いてもいいですか？
はい。
僕はこれからどうすればいいでしょうか？
今、目の前にいる家族を大事にするしかないでしょう。パウロさんだってルディにはそれを望んでいるはずです。前を向いてください。みんな待っていますから。
And yeah, that's also another actually really big thing for Rudy, and that Roxy's kind of unintentionally hitting on, where a big element of Rudy's motivations is his family, where he kind of takes on that from Paul, not directly, but the thing that really drives him for the rest of the series is looking out for his family. And Roxy's kind of encouraging him to grab onto that and realize that, yeah, if I stay like this, I can't be there for my family. And, you know, that's something that helps him do this.
はい。
Well, the way I always read things with Rudy is that he almost never actually reveals directly that he's reincarnated, and the only times he really ever does that is out of necessity, essentially. Like, he does it with Nanahoshi because, I mean, she kind of forces his hand in a sense, but also that's the only other person who is reincarnated in this world, so that's why she knows. He tells the other person, I'm not going to say who, because it's actually directly relevant to what they're doing. Like, it's information that he needs to know. So he tells him, and then Eris is just kind of there and happens to overhear it. So that's how she learns. Rudy is very clearly always going to be very ashamed of his past life, and it's one of those things he tries to put it behind him, like keep it in his past. Yeah, again, exactly. It's something he doesn't like about himself, and he's just like, I don't want this. Like, he almost wants to kind of bury it. He wants to kind of like make it out so that it doesn't exist. And so, and it's not that he's like trying to be deceptive to anybody, but it's one of those things like he hates it so much that he's never going to reveal it unless he really feels like he has to.
師匠、ありがとうございました。
はい。
ロキシあなた。
ルディ、申し訳ありませんが、私はエリナリーゼさんと話があるので、リーリャさんのところには一人で行ってください。
わかりました。
Yeah, and again, I do think the one thing that's kind of saving the lead up to this moment that is again just how you can tell his face is caved in more so than and yeah, so like he looks visibly unhealthy. So I think that actually does do a lot, and I'm actually very Lilia's reaction could actually mean a lot as well. Because I think one thing is if Lilia like reacts with like a lot of surprise here that he's up and about, that could also be a good way of selling the idea that he's been kind of catatonic for a while now.
リーリャさん。
何でしょうか、
Okay.
ルーデウス様。
He didn't
す
do
みま
that.
せん。母さんの世話を押し付けてしまって。
いいえ、これが私の仕事です。
母さんの様子はどうですか？
記憶はないようですが、不思議と体の方は健康です。変な後遺症もありません。
そうですか。
ということは、
And I love how he's
記憶を
basically
失ってい
talking
る
in
だけで
whispers. That's really
精
nice.
神がか
Yeah, I agree, Amir. That was a great moment in the that was a great moment where not just for like the obvious reasons, but also just shows the connection he has where it's just like this is Roxy is the one person he ends up revealing his deepest insecurities to, even if he does it in a somewhat roundabout way. Like, yeah, again, like Rudy's bond with each of his wives, I love how they're each different. They all have a fundamentally different texture about them, where he has different things he feels he can share with each of them, different things he can rely on them for. And that's one thing is like it just shows how much he trusts Roxy.
完全に死んだわけではないのか。
シェラさんの見立てでは、魔力結晶に閉じ込められたことによる魔力的な弊害だろうと。
And actually, interestingly, that is actually sort of true based on what happens much later on in the story.
治るんでしょうか？
エリナ・リーゼ様の話によると、無理とのことです。私は奥様にはよくしていただきました。旦那様がお亡くなりになった以上、私が奥様の面倒を見ます。
And I also do actually really like this moment with Lilia because, you know, a whole big thing of Lilia is debt and is what she owes people. Where a big reason she essentially groomed Aisha into Rudy's service is because she felt like she owed Rudy, and taking care of Zenith for the rest of her life is essentially how she feels like she's going to repay Zenith for not casting her out in that moment. You know, it all comes full circle. And that's a kind of a tragic thing about Lilia, where I think she's a phenomenal character, honestly. Like, overall, absolutely incredible. Again, slightly less so in the anime because they skipped that early scene with her. But at the same time, the tragic thing about her is that she never really feels worthy as her own person to herself. She never really... Again, she feels like the surrogate to mother to Rudy, where she's like, no, she in many cases, she really is like fulfilling a motherly role to Rudy. She never understands it that way. She always thinks of herself as secondary to Zenith, and her taking care of Zenith is not just out of gratitude, not just out of a sense of responsibility, but she feels like this is my position. My position is to care for this person because I'm the subservient one in this. Yeah, again, she never views herself as Paul's wife. She's Paul's other wife, essentially.
俺もできることはするつもりです。
必要ありません。ルーデウス様、差し出がましいとは思いますが、少しだけ失礼な物言いを許していただいてもよろしいでしょうか。
And again, I love that moment, like where she's like, "Hey, is it okay if I'm a little bit impolite right now?" That's a really great. I think that line of dialogue actually says so much about Lilia.
はい。
あなたは自分のやるべきことをなさい。
やるべきことですか？
旦那様もそうおっしゃるでしょう。
奥様のお世話は私がすべきことです。そのために私は今ここにいます。
帰りましょう。
And I also find it like not funny, but like slightly amusing that the impolite thing she wanted to say was actually still pretty polite.
家族のところへ。
Yeah, and again, just reinforcing what Roxy already told him, that his duty is to his family and that he has to really lock in on that. And that again, that gets him the first step, which is out of bed. And willing to live, essentially. But again, I actually do like that he... Okay, I do like that they're showing that he's physically weak currently. Granted, I do think it could be easily misconstrued as being down to his injuries. But it also, you know, they're at least showing the after effects of his self-neglect. And yeah, and the like the soft music, the minor key going on during these otherwise high octane scenes, I like that a lot. Like it's almost like a blunted version of that the end of the last episode where they had that really powerful emotions with the you know, warm lighting, the happy visuals, with the sad music in the background just really punching you in the face. This feels like kind of an extension of that, where things are a little bit better, so it's not as gut punchy as before, but he's also, you know, still not doing so well. Yeah, and that look from Elise is great, where it's probably not a comfortable situation for her. But also, actually, now that I think of it, I'm actually kind of realizing something that I never thought of before, where I wonder if there's a connection between this whole thing where, you know, Roxy essentially pulls Rudy out of his depression with sex, and there may not have been another way to get that done, where Rudy, if nothing happened, Rudy would have essentially killed himself. Not directly, but like just through neglect, he would have died. Or at least got into a position where he absolutely needed somebody else to kind of take care of his needs to survive. And so, you know, the sex in a sense preserved his life. Even though he is married and he normally wouldn't do that, and, you know, he is effectively cheating on Sylphie. I wonder if Elise, because before all this went down, let's not forget that she is still with Cliff. And at one point she did actually, I don't think they explicitly mentioned it in the anime, but there was a point where she hired a sex worker because of her curse, because she had to do that in order to live. And that was kind of thing that was understood that she needed to do. She had already kind of cleared it with Cliff, and it's one of the things she didn't want to do it, but she had to do it, and you kind of work with it as much as sorry. Okay, sorry. Shit. I don't know what the fuck. Okay. Shit. How long has that been happening? I think I fixed it. Like, that should have not. Oh shit. How long was that an issue, guys? Could one of you tell me? Cause, oh, a minute. Okay. I don't know what happened. It seems like it kind of half changed scenes. Like it's weird. Like so here, let me show you kind of how my OBS looks. So this is the thing that here, I'll take that off so you can actually see what's going on. I know, you know, the infinite void, but this is what I see when in, and this is what projects to you guys on the stream. And I have these different scenes right here. This is the scene that we have here. This is my BRB screen, and this is a scene that is just my screen, just my monitor display. So yeah, and what happened was it was weird. It seems like it half shifted to, it seems like it shifted to this scene, sort of. And I can't shift to it to show you guys because otherwise you won't like see it. But I also don't have as much audio stuff going on in these other two screens. But it seems like part of it shifted to that other scene, and it just didn't shift back. Or I don't know why it shifted there because I didn't hit the hotkey for it. So that was what kind of changed things. So I'm glad somebody pointed it out because I would not have noticed it because I definitely did not hit the hotkey, but it still changed scenes, which is a problem. So I'll be honest, because of that now I lost my train of thought. Not anyone else and not anyone's fault. I was saying something. I don't remember exactly what I was saying. So I was talking about I was talking about the connection between Elise and Rudy, where so I don't know how much of this you guys missed because of the thing, but with Elise, the whole idea is that she had to sleep with a stranger in order to live during this thing, even though she's still with Cliff, and she doesn't want to do it, but she kind of has to do it. And I think part of her also realizes that this is a case of Rudy not wanting to sleep with somebody other than Sylphie, but also kind of it needed to happen in order to save him. So that little look she gave him, I wonder if it's a case of if there's like a connection between the two things where like Elise, you know, she's not happy about it because Sylphie's her granddaughter. She doesn't like that Rudy's slept with another woman, but I wonder if there's that connection between her having to sleep with a sex worker in order to survive and Rudy having to sleep with Roxy in order to pull himself out of his deepest spirals of his depression. Like I think there's a connection there because Rifujin is too smart for that, but you know, I'm curious. Yeah, one thing I do like about this episode a lot is there's a lot of moments where they're just kind of letting things linger. Like they're not moving individual scenes forward that much. Like they're just kind of, again, letting the raw emotion of the things just sit there while, you know, characters are just there and there's no music to distract you. I think it's very good.
どうしましたダディ
はっきり言う。俺はロキシーが大好きだ。
Yeah, and that's also a great one where Rudy like really just understands how he feels. And this is going to be a big moment for him because let's not forget that before he left Sylphie behind, he, you know, his whole thing was that he was completely devoted to her. He was never going to abandon her, never going to leave her, going to do everything in his power to not hurt her. And now he not only slept with another woman, which, I mean, I'll be honest, she probably, and honestly, I think that scene where, I do kind of regret that they didn't have that scene where Sylphie says she'll be understanding if he sleeps with somebody else because she knows his family, but because that kind of primes you to accept what her ultimate reaction is, even though it's slightly misleading. But okay, but yeah, so not only is he like feel like he betrayed Sylphie, in a sense he kind of did, but so he feels bad about that, but also realizes that there's like a genuinely like has an emotional connection. Yeah, and that's also true. Yeah, that was a funny scene. And what the fuck? Sorry, my computer did a weird thing right there, just making sure that it didn't affect the stream at all. Okay, yeah, it looks fine. Some of my okay, I don't know, my taskbar seems to have refreshed for some reason, and that just kind of fucked with everything. Okay, never mind. But yeah, but I like how
シル
there's
フィーとは
a
多少
real
ベクトルの違う
connection.
好きだが
Yeah.
どっちが
Yeah, and that just highlights something I've been saying, where they have this bond between the three of them, but I mean, he has his bond with his three wives. Each one is different, and they have just a different dynamic about them, and they all kind of combine for a greater overall whole.
だと聞かれても答えられない。だから揺れている。シルフィーが好きでロキシーも好きなこの状況に。だが俺はシルフィーにミサオを立てると誓った。それを裏切るわけにはいかない。
Yeah, and exactly. And Rudy's got to really be beating himself up for that.
実は俺もう結婚していて、もうすぐ子供も生まれるんです。だからあまり恋人みたいな感じは申し訳ないんですけど。
知っています。パウロさんが亡くなってみんなでルディを心配している時、エリナリーゼさんから聞きましたから。
じゃあなぜ？
ルディが気に病むことはありません。私はルディが弱っているところにつけ込んだだけです。
And I think that's also an interesting line, just because it kind of calls back to how Rudy was with Eris early on, where a lot of his initial scenes were him trying to kind of scare her away by talking about all the dirty things he was going to do, where he's kind of deflecting a lot of things onto himself. I don't know if I might be stretching a little bit with that, but I don't know. It's like Roxy offering a kind of Rudy-esque justification for everything to kind of give him an emotional out. You know, I mean, he knows that it's not real, that he did have real feelings there too, but like, I don't know. It just feels like a very Rudy way of deflecting the conversation, not in a bad way, but in an interesting way.
本来なら私みたいなのを相手にしてくれないのは分かっています。
そんなことを。
安心してください。私がルディの左手となるのはこの旅の間だけです。ルディはあちらに戻ったら。
And that also again highlights Roxy's low self-esteem, where she feels like the other, that not something that Rudy could ever really care about.
恩返しですか。
はい。俺にできることなら何でもします。
じゃあ言い訳を聞いてもらってもいいですか。
言い訳ですか。
聞くだけでいいですから。
はい。わかりました。
And that's another thing I do like about Roxy, when she really kind of locks in emotionally. Like, her moments get really good when she really is able to kind of focus and express herself. I like that a lot.
私一目惚れだったんですよ。
誰にですか？
ルディにです。迷宮で助けてもらった時にですよ。
俺に？
あの場面では私でなくてもドキッとしてしまいますよ。私の理想そのままでした。迷宮を探索している時も。
And I also do like how Roxy is giving this whole speech when she feels like it's gonna be for nothing, essentially. That Rudy's gonna go back to his wife and leave her when all is over, and she's, accepted that, but she still wants to get all of her feelings out in the open for him. I like that a lot. And again, it leads into the fact that her arc has progressed to a point where she is now kind of escaped her childhood self, and she is become more mature. Has become, I should say.
目をそらされてましたけど。
それはだって恥ずかしいじゃないですか。
Although, as much as I'm saying that, it also is funny because she's basically describing a childhood crush, which is very adorable.
ダメだとは思っていたんです。エリナリーゼさんやギースさんもルディなら自力で立ち直るって言ってました。けどブエナ村で暮らしていた頃を思い出して。いや、もちろんルディには愛する人がいるって聞きましたし、
Yeah.
きっとルディが
And I love how you can tell exactly what Rudy's feeling. He's realizing, holy shit, this is really real. And I mean, it's still fucking with his head, but he's just like, oh, the things I've been thinking, I might have to rethink them now.
でもその人が立ち直らせてくれるんでしょう。でもその人は今ここにいないじゃないですか。なら誰かが助けてあげないとってそう思うじゃないですか。でもエリナリーゼさんもギースさんも放っておくつもりで、
Yeah, and that's also a good showcase of the fact that, you know, I mentioned how Rudy's bond with his three wives are all different, but also they're all very special in a way because Rudy, the way people view him, because they have such confidence in him that when he's going through it, everyone kind of assumes that he can handle it, that he's strong enough, when emotionally he's not. And he definitely needs someone to be there and to lead so that he can lean on. And that his wives are three of the only people who ever fully understand that, who are there, who are willing to be there for him rather than just trusting him to power through. And they're not the only ones. There was Soldad, of course, but yeah, that's it's an important detail. What the fuck? Why? Oh no. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's like that. Just gonna refresh. Okay, let's get back to where we were. It's a great scene, but I don't necessarily want to. There. Okay, I think that's close enough.
エリナリーゼさんやギースさんもルディなら自力で立ち直るって言ってました。けどブエナ村で暮らしていた頃を思い出して。
And honestly, seeing a flashback of childhood Rudy there is great. Because it just, again, shows, you know, the core of what Rudy is. And honestly, Roxy's not wrong about that. I think the kind of love that Sylphie would have showed him is also could have pulled him out of it.
エリナリーゼさんもギースさんも放っておくつもりで、リーリャさんはゼニスさんにつきっきりで手が離せなくて、じゃあ私がするしかって思うじゃないですか。だって仕方ないじゃないですか。好きなんですもん。ひどいですよ。あんまりですよ。
Yeah, I know I'm being really quiet now, but it's a very good scene.
何ですか。
せめてこの旅の間だけでも。
それでどうするんだ。何の解決にもなっていない。
Yeah, and the little interjections with Rudy's narration are also very well done. You know, again, they have to do it a little bit differently than the books, just because the books are all in Rudy's head, so he's constantly going on these little soliloquies. They can't really do that in the anime, so I think the interjections they're doing actually work really well. What? Oh, that's fucking... Okay.
やめてください。そういうのは何もする必要はありません。
わかりました。
And that was a beautiful ending frame. Ooh, I like that a lot. That's a pretty bit of scenery. And also a great way to show that they're back home.
ルディ、ここは？
シャリアの近くにある森です。
信じられん。本当に北方大地まで来たのか。道理で先輩がラパンに来るのは早かったわけだ。
くれぐれも他言無用でお願いしますね。
Okay, and I do like how Rudy still feels his obligation to protect the secret, so he takes steps to make sure nobody can actually see what's going on.
Ludeus.
はい。
あなたミリス京都ではありませんでしたわよね。
違います。
シルフィもミリス京都ではありませんわね。
Oh, huh. Okay, I think I was wrong in a previous stream. Because I could have sworn that Sylphie was Millis, but I guess I was wrong about that. Okay, I'll own up to that.
経験なミリス京都ですわ。知ってます？ミリス京都というのは 妻を一人しかめとってはいけないという決まりが
Oh,
あるんです
that is
よ。
interesting, Thomas.
その妻を生涯かけて愛しなさいという少々堅苦しいけれど実際に愛される側に回ってみると心地よい教えですわね。けれどルーデウス、私は別に複数の相手を同時に愛することが悪いとは思いま
And
せ
I
ん。
will say that's also a pretty big deal for Elenalise because, again, she has this newfound emotional just epiphany that she's had, where again she's kind of found the value of, she enjoys the monogamy with Cliff, and she also enjoys having Sylphie as a granddaughter and kind of having this new family. And she again probably is not thrilled by the idea that Rudy is with somebody else, but she's also kind of understanding the breadth of the emotional situation, and it's like able to kind of overlook her own emotions regarding the matter. And it also doesn't hurt that she does like Roxy, so that helps. And you are right, Eduardo, although at this point you can't necessarily know that without future knowledge. And I'm not going to say too much more just because, again, I'm trying to avoid pretty much anything that's past Turning Point 4 until Turning Point 4 actually happens. Because again, I know that while most of the people watching the stream right now have read the books, or at least know what happens in the books, there are some anime-onlys that do tune into the stream, so I don't want to spoil things too much for their sake, because I would absolutely hate to be the person that fucks up the what do you call it? The Turning Point 4, because I think that's a moment that needs to be experienced.
エナリーゼさん、さっきから何が言いたいんですか？
ルーデウス、ロキシーをめとりなさいな。
本気で言ってるんですか？
ええ、私が言いますわ。私でないと言えませんもの。正直、今のロキシーは見ていられませんわ。あの子、本当はあなたに甘えたいのに身を引くつもりですのよ。
Yeah, and again, and scenes like this are why I absolutely love Elenalise as a character.
私、控えめでもいいからロキシーには幸せになってほしいんですの。
いや、俺はシルフィーと
ロキシーのことはどうしたいんですの？
幸せになってほしいですよ。できることなら俺がロキシーもシルフィーも幸せにしたい。でも
虫のいい話だ。
Yet again, that's
シ
another
ルフィ
thing
ー
of
と結婚して子供まで
Rudy
作っ
just
て。
again, yeah, Rudy just feels like he's not worthy of any of this. And again, it just goes down to his self-esteem. Granted, it's also it is a little unusual to have a chance to be married to two people at once. That's, you know, not even in this world, that's not like the most common thing to have genuine like emotional relationships with multiple people who accept each other. But yeah,
それでいて別の女も欲しいなんて。
so it's understandable but still
俺
reflective
は
of his
今まで
emotional
散々
state.
パウロをクズだと言ってきておいて、あいつと同じようなことをしたいと考えている。
思い出してごらんなさい。パウロがディーリアをめとった後、ゼニスは不幸になりましたか？
Oh, and that's a beautiful flashback. I love the light yellow green overtones of that, really highlighting the brightness of the original Buena Village area.
最初母さんは泣いていましたけどね。
それくらいは仕方ありませんわ。あなたならできますわ。シルフィーとロキシーを同じぐらい愛することが。パウロの息子ですもの。それぐらいの解消があるはずですわよ。
Yeah, and okay, and that's actually also, I really like that line, especially the, you know, the gentle ribbing about Paul. Like that's actually, I don't know, that makes this scene so much more human, that she's kind of again poking fun at Paul in a friendly sense. You know, that's they're kind of sharing that bond of having known him that way.
二人が好きだという気持ちに偽りはない。だが旅先でこんなことになってシルフィーに幻滅されるだろう。ロキシーだって自分だけを愛してほしいかもしれない。二人に見放されてまた一人になるかもしれない。
And then that's another thing that Rudy is so terrified about, because again, we saw the last time he got like really rejected was with Eris, even though he wasn't really rejected, he just thinks he was, but how much that kind of broke him. and now he's with two people who he loves, and he's scared of them both leaving him, which would, really hurt him. And I love how he's like at the point where he's willing to risk that. Because like the safe choice would be to just stay with Sylphie, but yeah, he's willing to follow his heart to the point where he's risking serious hurt for it.
じゃあ今ロキシーに聞いちゃいなさいな。
Yeah, and I also like how Elinalise kind of forced Rudy's hand a little bit because he kind of needed that push to actually do it.
話というのは何でしょうか。
師匠にお話ししたいことがありまして。
はい。
師匠の教えに何度も助けられました。俺は師匠がいたからここまで生きてこられました。それで。
Let's see, yeah. Elinalise's shotgun wedding. Let's see. Rudy's about to refuse. Elinalise says, I don't want to do this, but Roxy hasn't had a monthly visitor. I don't like this change. Elinalise's shotgun wedding is too strong a character device to avoid it for general acceptability. She is who she is. She was trick a man to overcome his moral qualms. Yeah, I do agree with that. It adds another layer to things. But I also do think that this works. It's just different. I think it's hard to say definitively. It's one of those ones where I don't feel strongly enough about it to say it's necessarily better or worse, but I understand your perspective, and I think it's essentially the same scene as just doing two different things depending on which version you look at. Okay, sorry. Okay.
ですね。俺にはもう妻がいます。シルフィエット・グレイラットという名前なのですが。
はい、お聞きしました。
何が言いたいんだ俺は。
妻はもともとは名字がなくてただのシルフィエットだったんです。
Yeah, that is true, Thomas.
そう聞いています。
そういうことじゃないだろう。
I actually also really love how Rudy is just really awkward in this moment where, things almost kind of tended to flow really well with Sylphie. Like, it was kind of, again, because it was an emotional capping point to a major arc, and it was like a whole big thing that he was finally with Sylphie, and it was meant to be kind of artistic and, have that kind of sense of flow to it. And now that he's with Roxy, who, he does love her, but he's also completely idolized her for his entire life. I love that he's kind of just awkward, stuttering, basically a high schooler. It's really a nice moment. And again, shows that his dynamic with her is different than his dynamic with Sylphie.
後になってああしておけばというぐらいなら俺はクズでいい。
Yeah, and again, he ties it back to his previous, his driving motivation is I don't want to live with regrets.
師匠もロキシー・グレイラットに名前を変えるつもりはありませんか？
And that's still like, and I love how he says that. Like, it's a very nice way of expressing it, but it's also really funny because it's a really awkward way to ask somebody to marry you. I actually really love that.
愛しています。
And that delayed reaction from Roxy is fucking perfect.
そう言ってくださるのはとてもありがたいです。でも。
Yeah, and I will say I do kind of agree as well with Eduardo there, where, I mean, I think the biggest flaw of this episode is again how I think the beginning was kind of fucked up a little bit, but I think they're actually doing a lot of good after the sex scene. I think the lead up to that, they didn't sell what they needed to sell quite well enough. But yeah, I do agree that given the context of the fact that they didn't get here in the best way, at least not in a way that actually kind of feels as good as the light novels, it actually probably would have a lot of baggage if Elinalise was just outright manipulative in this scene and making shit up just to get Rudy to kind of have that final push. Yeah, I think that actually would have, now that you mention it, I think that would have done more harm than good if they actually brought it over.
奥さんの了承は取らなくてもいいんですか？
取らなきゃいけないです。
では。では、その後でもう一度聞かせてください。
Yeah, and I like that resolution as well. It kind of it's Roxy, you know, doing the thing that she wants while also doing it in a way that kind of satisfies her insecurity, where she's like, you know what, I'm giving you a yes that's not really a yes just yet. But it's also a great way to get Rudy to kind of be in a position where, like, you know, he kind of knows the path forward now. And again, even though he didn't explicitly get the yes, like, it's a yes in all but name. A conditional yes, essentially. And actually, I also really like the continued shots to Paul's sword, showing to represent the connection Rudy has with him. I think that's a really nice touch. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was very good. I like that a lot. Oh. Okay. ED song. Lately, music has been an issue with the streams, so I'm going to skip that. I'll watch it on my own, though. But excuse me for 1 minute. I gotta pee. I've been drinking a lot of water. That's a natural consequence of that. I will be right back. Okay, I am back. Let me just make sure audio and stuff is all working, and it looks like it is. Good. All right, let me get my stuff pulled back up, and yeah, let's get started with the final episode. I'm very eager to see this. Because again, while there are a few hiccups so far, overall, actually, the adaptation of these last couple episodes has been phenomenal.
ルディ、
なんだ？そんなに奥さんに会いたいかね？
なんでもっと早く気づかなかったんだ。
君はベガリット大陸に行けば後悔する。
If you go to Beggar, you'll
確
regret
か
it.
にパウロは死んだ。だがそれは後悔ではなく
Yeah, and again, I love this moment of realization. It's so good. And again, it actually it does really hit hard. As much as I do say that one of the Mushoku Tensei's biggest flaws as a whole is the fact that I don't think they do enough with Rudy's kids, which I am told is fixed in redundancy, but I can only speak for the main series. But I do love how Rudy misses the birth of his first child, and that's kind of something that really eats at him. Because again, that father-son thing was like a big element of the story as a whole. Like that was a big important character dynamic going on. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay.
楽しみだ。
ベガリット大陸に行って帰ってくる。その間君は自分の奥さんを一人にするのかい？
シルフィー。
And I think that's a great way to cap off that how much he still gives a shit about Sylphie. I mean, it's not that anyone would think anything else, but it's a great way of selling that. Yeah, and then... And I gotta say, I don't know how much of it is the fact that I know what happens here, so I'm not like, I don't have any kind of fake out working on me, but I feel like the emotional impact doesn't feel as devastating to the viewers of this as it does for Rudy. Because I think something in the way this scene is framed kind of makes it clear that they're just out of the house at the moment. Even though Rudy is like, you know, completely freaking out. Because, you know, when Rudy gets emotional, his brain turns off.
お前は無事なんだな。
無事って何が？え、お兄ちゃんってどうしたの？
ノルは、シルフィは。
ノルネは多分学校だと思うけど、シルフィーネは。
Oh, and yeah, that little fake out right there was pretty good, where Aisha gets cut off until he sees Sylvie. Oh wait, okay. I'm such an idiot. I said he missed the birth. He didn't. Fuck. I don't know why I thought that. I gaslit myself. I'm a fucking idiot. Never mind. Don't listen to me. I know I'm the streamer, but don't fucking listen to me.
アイシャちゃんも頑張ってくれたから。
ノルはリニアやツナバ、クリフたちは無事か？
無事って何もないよ。
誰も病気とか怪我はしてないんだな。
特には。
そっか。
ルディ、お兄ち
ゃん？よかった。
Yeah, and then and I love how he finally is able to kind of drop everything once he's finally home. He realizes everyone's safe, and he's like, good, I can finally relax, or in a sense, I can finally rest.
ルディ、おかえりなさい。
ただいま。
Ooh, I love that little head tilt from Roxy. That is so perfect. Yeah, and again, I also still love how in this, like, because Rudy's not like sad right now, but he's uncomfortable because he knows he's about to have a very, very difficult conversation. I love that when he has these moments, he like speaks in a whisper, his voice drops an octave. It really just says a lot about his emotional state, just the way he delivers his lines.
Everyone 揃ったので話をしよ
う。兄さん、お父さんは？
父さんはパウロ・グレーラットは死亡した。
Whew, that's a really blunt way of delivering that that reveal. and actually, again, and I noticed there's one thing is they do show a number of parallels between Rudy and Norn, like I mentioned during the last stream. But man, I love how she has the same kind of reaction that Rudy has to this kind of like, again, this kind of loss where she like immediately kind of goes into shock, basically.
これが遺品だ。そしてこれが。
なんで兄さんが言ったのに、なんでお父さんが死んじゃうんですか。
ごめん、俺の力不足だ。
And again, and this is another great moment because we know that Rudy and Norn kind of got over their struggles with one another. Like they became a real family. But I love how that when Norn is pushed to kind of her breaking point because again she lost the father that she idolized probably more than anyone else. But and she's kind of lashing out at Rudy because of it because she just doesn't really know how else to process it. And it's it's a case of again she's not like actually mad at him, but that's how she is. That's the only way she's able to kind of express herself in that moment. It's a really good way kind of calling back to how their interaction started, even though it's not like a complete return to that dynamic. Yeah. And again, I do love how the arm being missing just shows like, holy shit, it's not that he's slacked in any way, even though, I mean, again, we do know that Rudy freezing up was kind of the reason that everything happened, but also she realizes like, oh, it's not for a lack of trying that this didn't work out because he lost his fucking hand because of it. And that's like it was actually just falling short of expectations. And also that little moment right there too is great. It shows that these two have actually started to become like real sisters now, where they're not constantly bickering and fighting anymore. Again, just those little moments like this actually do a lot to showcase the dynamic that everyone is feeling.
以上がこれまでの顛末だ。
じゃあ、お父さんは助からず、お母さんは記憶が。
そうだ。
兄さんも頑張ったんですよね。
全力を尽くしたつもりだ。
And actually, that's also a big revelation. That's also like a big moment for Rudy, where he actually does acknowledge he tried his best, which is like that's actually a big deal for him because again, he always blames himself for everything, and it was his error that kind of was the moment that got Paul to be killed. Not saying that it wouldn't have happened if he didn't make his mistake, but that was kind of the catalyst for that particular series of events. However, he's able to kind of reconcile that and realize, you know what? I made a good attempt. I fucked up, but I can't be ashamed of how I performed. And I also do like what Norn is about to say, where it's like, you know what? She's accepting of it. She doesn't toss it onto Rudy anymore, where she's like, and it just shows the trust she has in him, saying, if your best wasn't enough, nobody's would be. And
兄さんが頑張ってもダメだったんだろ。誰がいても。どうしてもダメでお父さん死んじゃって。
Man, that is excellent voice acting, by the way. And again, just Aisha comforting her is also just really a wonderful touch. Yeah, and the music as well, that also really was great.
兄さん。
And I also really do like that, it cuts to her having calmed down and Aisha is still like right next to her hugging her. Like I love that shows that Aisha was there the entire time. That again, it just goes to show that they don't have to actually show the mending of the bridge between Aisha and Norn. They just have to show the results, and you kind of get what happened and how things progressed during the few months that Rudy wasn't there.
その剣、私が持っていてもいいですか？
そうだな。ノルンが持ってろ。でもむやみに使おうとするなよ。剣を持つということは、心の中にも一本の剣を持っておく必要があるんだ。大切なものを守るには、心構えが必要ってことだ。
Yeah, and again, I do love, again, as much as I do complain about Mushoku Tensei kind of not hitting the mark with Rudy's own kids, I do like how he does end up, taking on almost a pseudo father role with Norn and Aisha, where he does try to pass on a lot of the lessons Paul taught him to them. So this, I mean, as much as I do complain about the Rudy's own kids, a lot of the things I wanted from them are actually expressed with Norn and Aisha. So moments like this I do actually really like.
その剣を持っているからといって、自分が強くなったと勘違いしちゃいけない
Yeah,
か
and
ら。
that's almost like, and I love how this is almost like word for word the same speech Paul gave Rudy about magic.
わかりました。
Okay, and that's adorable.
母さん。奥様。
Yeah, and again, these little moments like right here, they do actually take on a whole new layer when you realize kind of the full extent of what happened, which again, that's happening way later. I'm not going to spoil it. It's very good. And there's one scene where like I'm going to fucking riot if they don't adapt this one scene, the one speech, I should say, the one that is given. Those who've read the books will know what I'm talking about, but yeah, so that's another moment I think needs to be experienced. So I'm not going to talk about it, but just saying these little actions from Zenith do actually change a lot of how I felt about it.
治らないの？
わからない。母さんにはこの家で一緒に暮らしてもらおうと思う。身の回りの世話なんかについてはリーリャさんに一任するつもりだ。けどみんなには細かいところで迷惑をかけると思う。
わかった。僕も
Yeah,
頑張る
and
よ。
again, I love that it's like he brings it up to Sylphie. I love how it's like just kind of unspoken even before he says it, that he's like, yeah, this is not going to be an issue for her. She's going to just immediately jump to taking him in. Kind of like how she immediately jumped at taking in Norn and Aisha, where it's like, yeah, that's just how this is going to be. Because we know Sylphie at this point.
の、ということはお母様もここで暮らすんですか？
はい。ルーデウス様のお世話になるつもりです。
仕事の分担とかはするんでしょうか？
それは後で話しましょう。
はい。ねえ、アイシャ、私たちに遠慮することないよ。
Yeah. And again, I love that moment as well. I remember this from the books. I absolutely loved it because, again, it does what I was talking about earlier, how it shows that these two have actually, in the real sense, become sisters. Like they actually have accepted each other, even though they're different people. But it also shows that Aisha is still kind of dealing with a lot of the residual effects of being brought up by Lilia. Because as much as Lilia is a great character and a fundamentally good person, she does kind of, she never really completely overcomes her own trauma. And she has that idea in her head of how she is always second, that she's not as good as Zenith. She's the lesser wife to Paul. And some of that ends up getting projected onto Aisha, who herself feels a degree of having a lower status, not quite to the extent of Lilia, but also feeling like, she can't really do things for herself, essentially. And we saw that even in a previous episode where Rudy ended up buying her something, the decoration she wanted, and she was like, I didn't expect to ever be able to actually make a decision as far as decor. And it's a persistent thing. And then again, I love how Norn tells her, like, you're part of the family, act like it, essentially. And that's what causes her to break right here. And again, just the showcase that everyone actually accepts her. And then that everyone loves her, that she's part of the family.
ただいま、愛車。
And again, and on top of that, I actually love how Norn is able to see that. Like, they've gotten enough of a bond that they can kind of tell how the other ticks. So that again, Norn like immediately sees that something's off and prods it out of her.
さて、じゃあ俺らは宿でも探すとすっか。
今夜くらいうちに泊まっていただいても。
先輩、バカ言ってんじゃねえよ。家族水入らずを邪魔するほど俺らは野暮じゃねえんだよ。
皆さん、長い間父さんを手伝っていただきありがとうございました。
私たちこそあまり役立てず申し
Yeah,
訳
and
ありません。
I still am a little sad that they skipped their backstory because there's, again, that's such a good series of things. Even though they're never like forefront in the story, just the way their characters both progress throughout things, it really does add a lot, I think. And it just adds a lot of like nice background flavor to everything that's been going on. And seeing them kind of all end on a really positive note like this, it's just good. It's another showcase of where things came, especially with how awkward their initial interactions was, and that was made even worse by the fact that Rudy didn't know why they were the way they were, and to show that they've
まだ
actually
町にはいる
become
ので、
friendly.
団長のお墓ができたら場所だけでも教えてください。
ベラさん、シェラさん。
そんな新規成果をすんなよ、先輩。
うん、お主に礼を言われる筋合いはない。言われるならパウロからじゃな。
キースさん、タルハンドさん。
おいおい、らしくねえぜ。いつも通り、おい、新入りとでも言ってくれよ。
なんでそこまで新入りに。
And I do like yeah, and again, Geese is again one of my favorite characters in the entire series for both at this point in the story and because of things that are revealed later on. But like, again, he's the person who like actually like reads people super well. He understands exactly what everyone needs at any given moment, and he knows exactly how to lighten the mood right here to make it not so somber, but again, and of course, just the way Geese is. He's the kind of person, he teases his friends. That's just how he is. Like he wants to get some shots in at Ruby, just friendly in a friendly way.
男どもはすぐにカッコつけたがりますわ。さて、私はクリフのところに行きますわ。
エリナリーゼさんもお世話になりました。
Yeah, and I love how it takes a different dynamic because he knows he's talking about more than just the journey, but also the stuff with Roxy.
パウロが死んだのは私のミスでもありますわ。
俺は責めませんよ、誰もね。
なら自分も責めたらダメですわよ。
はい。
シルフィー、ルーデウスはあなたのことを愛していますわ。
はい。
And I love that line right there, Rudy loves you, where, they haven't had the conversation yet, but I think that's gonna, essentially before it becomes relevant, she's already saying like, hey, listen to him, he's not bullshitting, essentially. And that Sylphie knows that Elinalise wouldn't mislead her in that way.
待てな、先輩。
シルフィー、大事な話がある。
And I also love that expression from Sylphie. I think she already kind of has it figured out at this moment. And the smile is
聞くよ。
again, just those little facial expressions tell everything you need to know.
Ore wa koko ni iru Roxyを 二人目の妻として迎えようと思っている。
I mean, yeah, I mean, as much as she did know, also, I think maybe she didn't like have the explicit ideas down. It's, you know, it's still a shock to hear it out loud.
父さんが死んで悲しくて辛くてもう生きることさえどうでもよくなって、そんな時に助けてくれたのがロキシーなんだ。
Yeah. And again, and this whole moment is something I really do like about Rudy, how I don't know that they really sold just how much emotional turmoil he's going through, but you know, his commitment to Sylvie is something that was so important to him, and he feels like he completely betrayed that. Even though it ends up working out for him, this is something that really just fucks him up inside. And this is something that is, you know, it's like the culmination of all of that, where he has to kind of come clean, open up, and just kind of essentially just bare his soul and let Sylvie do what she will.
ごめんシルフィー、ミサを立てるって言ったのに約束守れなかった。
お兄ちゃん。
シルフィー、許してほしい。
許せるわけないでしょ。シルフィー姉さんがどんな気持ちで兄さんを待っていたか知ってて言ってるんですか？毎日ルディは大丈夫かな、ルディに会いたいね、ルディも今頃ご飯食べてるかなって寂しそうにしてたシルフィー姉さんの顔と声を知ってて言ってるんですか？
Yeah. And again, and Norn's reaction too. Again, I love how she gets kind of emotional and immediately kind of just gets all upset and just has to let her thoughts be known. I mean, that's a very consistent character trait for her, where again, she's not, I mean, she's angry, but she's not like really, really angry. But well, she kind of is. I'm not expressing myself super well, where she just has this strong emotional reaction and has to let it out.
さんを助けられなかったのはしょうがないって思いました。左手も失ってそれぐらい厳しかったんだからしょうがないって。兄さんを責めることなんてできないって。
Yeah, and this is another instance where it would make a lot more sense. Like this line would actually hit a lot harder if they had actually shown just how much Rudy had neglected himself, how close he was to actually dying. So that, yeah, that would hit harder, because in a sense it was just that dangerous as well in this instance, and Norn just doesn't realize it. And okay, and I'm excited for this, because again, just the voice acting we've already seen from her is really, really fucking good. So
それなのに女の人を抱いて自分のものにする余裕はあったってことですか？
違う、そんな余裕はなかった。ロキシーはそんな俺を自分の気持ちを捨てて助けてくれたんだ。
シルフィー姉さんだってその場にいれば兄さんを助けたに決まってます。
お前だってわかるだろ。部屋に閉じこもって自分じゃどうしようもないと思った時の気持ちは、そこで助けてくれた人をどうしてないがしろにできるんだ。
And I really like that, because Rudy, this line is great because Rudy doesn't even realize that that's him. Like when he says that. Like that's such a cool little bit of double layered storytelling here, where he's drawing on the connection they have, because you know he knows what it's like to shut down, and he knows that she knows what it's like to shut down, but he doesn't realize that he's the one who pulled her out of it, because she kind of did that revelations on her own. And that, yeah, that's such a great way of doing it.
二人も妻をめとるなんてミリス様はお許しになりません。それになんでこんな小さい子なんですか？私とそんな変わらないぐらいじゃないですか。小さいかもしれませんが、これでも成人です。成人ならずうずうしいとか思わないんですか？ずかずかと入り込んできて悪いと思わないんですか？
And again, that's more of Norn just kind of completely lashing out. And I also do like how when Rudy like is really able to like step up and kind of overcome, because he does feel guilty, so he feels like he kind of earned this scolding. And I love how it's when it turns on to Roxy that he is willing to really just say, no, stop this.
ノルン言い過ぎだ。ロキシーを妻に迎えるって言い出したのは俺なんだ。悪いのは俺で、ロキシーは悪くない。彼女は身を引こうとしてくれたんだ。
兄さんは黙っていてください。
And again, and that's just like their mother when the emergency family meeting scene. Again, she had that same kind of reaction to Paul, and yeah, it's great.
大体身を引こうとしたのなら、なんで最後までそうしようとしないんですか？ 結局兄さんの言葉に甘えただけでしょ。そうですね。ずうずうしいです。申し訳ありませんでした。
反対されることは分かっていた。
Yeah, I agree with
だ
you,
がロキシー
Thomas.
に嫌な思いをさせたままここを去られるわけにはいかない。彼女を幸せにするって決めたのに、どうすればいい？どうすれば？
待って。
Yeah, and again, and yeah, of course, I love how it's Sylphie who's the one who kind of. I mean, everyone kind of knows that right now she's the boss. So I think having her be the one who kind of diffuses everything is absolutely like the best way to cap off this conflict.
ロキシーさん、待ってください。
Oh, and that's a great, yeah, that shot right there was incredible.
ごめんね、ノルンちゃん。僕のために。でも大丈夫だから。ありがとう。ちょっと混乱してたけど、ロキシーさんはルディを助けてくれたんだよね。はい。でも下心もありましたので、言い訳に使うつもりはありません。下心なしでって言われても逆に信じられないよ。
Yeah, and that's the thing I like about Sylvie. We already talked at length about how she's the emotionally intelligent one of the group, how she kind of gets everything. It's one of the things where she's been established as that type of character, so we can immediately see that she knows that Roxy's being genuine. And that's ultimately the reason she accepts her. Where I mean, she in the books she does tell Rudy that she would understand if he sleeps around, and that she wouldn't like it, but she would accept it essentially, and that she would forgive him. But realistically, the only time she's able to do that, and I can't really explain what I mean without spoilers, because there's just stuff that technically doesn't happen, but we see that Sylphie is accepting of Rudy having other women when it's real. Like when there's a real love there, there's a genuine emotional connection there. What she wouldn't be able to accept is if Rudy just slept around with somebody that he didn't care about. So that's just the type of person she is. And I like how they kind of established that line of reasoning and brought it to this scene.
僕がロキシーさんの立場でもやっぱり同じことをしちゃうと思う。正直ね。僕は時間の問題だと思ってたんだ。
Yeah, I mean that's true, but I view that less as a case of she would be understanding of his infidelity, and more a case of she felt like she wasn't going to give him the children that he wanted, because of she's an elf, she's a quarter elf, so that she's going to be less fertile than a human. So it took a while for her to get pregnant. So that was her idea. She felt like she wasn't enough for him, and that a concubine would essentially provide him with the thing that she couldn't, or at least that she felt she couldn't. So I feel like it's a little bit different.
ほら、ルディってエッチでしょ？僕とできないときっと誰かとしちゃうだろうなって思ってたんだ。それに、ルディを見る顔ですぐに分かったよ。そっか。僕もあんな顔だったのかな。
And that's just the speech is just really
不
adorable.
快なものを見せてしまって。不快じゃなかったよ。なんて言えばいいかな。ロキシーさんのことはルディからいつも聞いてたんだ。
Yeah, and that's also I think it's great. It's the fact that it was Roxy is a great way of doing this, just because again, Rudy had to have been just constantly gassing her up because of how much he idolized her.
なんと。俺の尊敬する魔術師はあの人だけだって。それはなんというか恐縮です。だからちょっと嫉妬してるところもあったんだ。本当にすごい人なんだろうなって。でも実際に見てルディが好きなだけの普通の女の子なんだって思ったら嫉妬なんて消えちゃったんだ。だって僕と一緒だもん。
Okay, that's really adorable.
ノルンちゃんはああ言ったけど僕は歓迎します。一緒にルディを支えていこう。 ありがとうございます。
Yep. Excellent. No notes. And I will say that is one thing I do really like about Mushoku Tensei is I know people often say that, Mushoku Tensei is one of the few series that actually gets the harem dynamic and has it well written. And I do think they're starting it off already pretty well. I do think it actually even gets better the more it goes on, because there are a lot of moments that are specifically focused on the family becoming a family and not just, again, not being centered around Rudy, but that they actually are a full cohesive unit. And with Roxy, I mean, that's going to be the hat scene, which, it's one that I know people don't care for in the books. Some people don't, I should say. No, it's not a universal opinion, but I will be actually kind of upset if they don't adapt it, because I think it's kind of the perfect encapsulation of what the whole family thing is going for in Mushoku Tensei, where, that's the moment Roxy fully feels like part of the family. And, again, I think that's such an important element to this dynamic, because Rudy's wives aren't just Rudy's wives, they essentially become sisters, in a sense, where they, like, to Roxy, Sylphie and Eris are as much family as anyone else. Again, she doesn't love them the way she loves Rudy, but they are her family just as much as Rudy is her family. And that's the important thing about all of this. And, yeah. And actually, another thing I thought of, I mentioned how each of the three wives has a different relationship dynamic. They each have a different thing they need to teach Rudy. They each contribute a different thing to the family unit, and they each have they all just kind of serve their own roles, and they're similar but slightly different. And oh shit, I'm probably gonna have to refresh that again. Sorry about that, but yeah. While I'm doing that, I'm gonna okay, I see about where it is. So I don't know why I guess the server for this totally legal, I promise, site is having issues. But one thing I do actually really like about something I just noticed is that another element of that, the three having that connection but also being different, is actually their names. They all take on Rudy's name, but in a different way, where Sylphie did not have a name and Rudy gave her a family name. So that was the one area where Sylphie gained the Grey Rat name. Roxy took on his name, but didn't do it in the same. Oh shit! Where am I? Sorry, I'm just trying to find my spot. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think here is probably good. But yeah. So yeah, Sylphie gains a new name in Rudy, in Grey Rat. Then Roxy takes on his name, but still keeps a connection to her original name, where instead of going from Magurdia to Grey Rat, she becomes Roxy Magurdia Grey Rat. And then Eris is already a Grey Rat, but then she drops her old familial connections and goes from Eris Boreas Grey Rat to just Eris Grey Rat. So I just noticed that's another way of kind of showing the three as having their own unique relationship to the overall unit, and I think that's actually really clever. I like that a lot. Let's move. Yeah. Okay, I'll be honest. I actually fucking love that voice acting right there. Holy shit, that's great. Yeah, and I also do love that. She also takes after Paul in a way where, after a big emotional moment, then, which that moment was essentially this parallel to the emergency family meeting scene. And after the original emergency family meeting, Paul took out his frustrations on Rudy in sword training. And now Norn's doing the exact same fucking thing, 12 years later. Yeah, and that's another great way where Norn now realizes that she kind of doesn't have a response to that, because the person she absolutely idolizes did the exact same thing Rudy's doing. So I don't know. It's again, I like Norn a lot, where she's a character who is not totally in control of her emotions, but she's very genuine underneath it all.
ですけど、ノルンちゃん、リーディアさんにもそう言うの？
Yeah, and again, the fact that
ごめん、アイシャ。
いいよ別に。ノルン姉がよく考えずに物言ってるの知ってるから。何その言い方。
and it's great. Yeah, I 100% agree. It is amazing how Sylphie's discussions make her think of Aisha, who they have developed a very real sisterly bond. And then, you know, there's some genuine stuff, and then they're bickering again because, of course, they are sisters. They're gonna do that. It's all actually really blends super nicely. I like it a lot.
それにしてもまさかノルンが剣術を習いたいなんてね。
うん。でも気持ちはちょっとわかるかな。大切な人が遠くで戦っているのに、自分は待っているだけなんて辛いからさ。
And it's also kind of neat. I like this line a lot because it also kind of somewhat ties into how Eris felt, and that's why she left Rudy initially, because she wanted to go train herself, because she felt like she was, you know, not really contributing and didn't want to be left behind while everyone else did all the hard fighting. So she wanted to be able to stand next to them as an equal.
シルフィー、予定日はいつなんですか？
あと1ヶ月ちょっとかな。でもロキシー、本当にいいの？
Yeah, that's a great detail, Alan. I didn't notice that either, but it's a great detail.
いえ、正直シルフィーには申し訳ない気持ちが大きいので、出産まで待たせてください。正式な妻になるのはその後で。
そっか。ロキシーがそう言うなら。
Yeah, and I also do like that because, you know, how Roxy, you know, she was originally willing to sacrifice her feelings for Rudy's sake and for his wife's sake, and I like how she kind of came up with a compromise for that. Like, Sylphie accepted her completely, but Roxy's like, I still kind of wants to make a little bit of an emotional sacrifice because of how she feels. And you know, waiting until Sylphie has her kid is a good compromise to that.
わかった。
赤ちゃん、楽しみですね。
うん、早く会いたいな。
Oh, that's a great way to... Okay, that was a good transition.
シルフィー、お疲れ様。
おめでとうございます、シルフィエット様。
That baby is way too clean.
髪緑じゃなくて。
Yeah. And it is kind of tragic that that's Sylphie's first reaction is, thank God her hair's not green. It's like, oh. You know, you just kind of want to give her a hug in that moment.
ルディも抱いてあげて。
And I also do like how Rudy is kind of freaking out the same way Paul did when Norn and Aisha were born. It's very funny. Like, funny in a wholesome way.
この子がシルフィーが産んでくれた俺の子供。
Yeah. And again, he has almost the same kind of reaction that Paul had when Rudy was born, where, you know, it's just like a life-changing moment for him. Ooh, and the glow of those candles actually really does a great... Yeah. Yeah, that was... Okay, I really liked the visuals of that scene.
パウロ、父さん、久しぶり。俺、父親になったよ。女の子だ。シルフィーの子供だし、きっと美人になるよ。
Yeah, and this is I really like
父さん
this
にも見せたかったな。
this scene as well. Have like the conversation, you know, pouring 2 glasses. Again, it's like they're, you know, again having a drink at the bar again, where, you know, that's kind of what their relationship would have been had things gone differently. So I like that a lot.
父さんは死んじゃったけど。
And it also shows that Rudy has actually like processed his
あの
death
時俺を生かしてく
to
れ
an
たから。
extent.
俺は今子供を抱くことができるんだ。父さんがいなかったら俺は。 名前はルーシーに決めた。ルーシー・グレイラット。
Yeah.
俺とシルフィーの頭文字を取ったんだ。
And it's also a good way of showing how Rudy no longer, I mean, and it's not that he no longer feels guilt, but that he's understood enough that he has to convert the guilt into gratitude. So, you know,
それから
pretty good.
ロキシー師匠を妻にしたんだ。妻が2人。父さんと一緒だな。こういう時の心構えとか教えてほしかったよ。父さんはギレーヌとかエリナリーゼと結婚しようって考えたりしたのかな。
Oh god, just imagine fucking Ghislaine as a mother. That would be hilarious. That would be a sitcom all on its own. Like, I would watch that spin-off.
でも父さんだからな。あんまり考えてなさそう。
Yeah, I mean that's also true. Knowing what we know about Paul, he didn't really like think with his upper brain until he got Zenith pregnant.
難しく考えない方がいいのかな。父さん、俺ダメな息子だったよ。前世の記憶とか持っててさ、ちゃんと息子として父さんと向き合えていなかった。
And it is also telling that another one of the few times he actually like really talks about how he feels in relation to his past life is again to a character who is dead. So like that's when he feels safe enough to let it out.
けど今はもうパウロ・グレイラットの息子のつもりだから。
Yeah, and then the full acceptance that Paul is his father, where
俺ようやく分かったよ。自分がまだまだ子供だったって。
Yeah, even though this is not really the close to this whole dynamic, again, I still think that comes with the hallucinations from much later. That's when it really comes to a resolution. But this is a great, like, conditional resolution here, essentially. Like, it's a good resolution for now.
前世の記憶で大人ぶってただけのガキだって。子供も生まれて親にもなったし、すぐに大人にならなくちゃとは思うけど。
And again, it's funny because that's essentially the exact thing that Paul went through, where he got Zenith pregnant. He realized, oh shit, I got to get my shit together like yesterday in order to be a good father.
きっともっとたくさん失敗して、いっぱい悩みながら、少しずつゆっくり変わっていかなきゃ、大人にはなれないんだろうな。
Yep, and a great ending soliloquy as well. Or I guess it's technically a monologue since he's talking to somebody even if the character is dead.
俺、頑張るよ。父さんがそうしてくれたみたいに、父さんが残してくれたものを守るよ。じゃあ、また来る。今度はみんなを連れて。
Okay. Yeah, and again, and I am glad that these last two episodes didn't have the an OP. And oh god, I got a music. Okay, sorry, I had to mute because that's absolutely gonna get claimed if I let that play out without muting it. But the music is actually really fits this ending soliloquy. Oh, and then a little nod to Eris. Okay. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a really solid way of ending the season. Yeah, absolutely excellent. Yes, and Succession is a great. Succession is an excellent title for this episode. It really actually does tie everything together, explains what it's all about without necessarily giving it away ahead of time. Okay, so yeah, that was very good. That was a great way to close off Mushoku Tensei. I'm ready for. I mean, I'm ready for season 3 already, but I know that I gotta wait for that because, oh man. So let me actually check the poll, see how many. So 22 votes. So it looks like the poll right now is 50% want light novels for next. Yeah, 50% want light novels. 14% want. What do you want, Kat? Hey. Sorry, I don't know if you guys heard that, but Kat decided to be she wanted to get herself involved in the stream, I guess. So yeah, half the people who voted want the light novels. Have 14% want the Marvel alternative, 27% want me to watch something else, and 9% say none of the above. So I think, I mean, granted, it's only 22 votes, but that's going to comprise most of the people who are here regularly. So I don't exactly know the exact mechanics of what I'm going to do. I mean, I know I'm going to obviously pull up because I have the books, the ebooks on my computer. So, I mean, I know I'm going to pull them up, but I don't know exactly the structure I'm going to do for it. But I'll figure something else out. We can definitely wing it. And honestly, I think starting off with Volume 1 will be good. Yeah, and I think I am going to do the light novels moving forward because, again, I'm still kind of in a Mushoku Tensei mood. And that'll definitely last us until season 3 comes out. So I don't know how much we're getting through of the light novels with each stream. That's something we're going to have to kind of feel out. I mean, that's kind of what I did for the anime, where the reason I ended up on 3 episodes per stream is that the first stream I did, it just happened to be, the first 3 episodes took like 6 hours to get through. So I figured, okay, that's a good amount of time I'm going to do. So next week we'll start with the light novels. We'll just kind of figure out about what pace we're going to be going at. And then based on how we do there, we're going to, that's kind of going to be, I'll set a duration to shoot for with every stream. Yeah, that's also true. That's something I'm also going to be bringing up. I mean, I will say the streams for Volume 1 are actually probably going to be easy for me to just kind of do just off the cuff, just because I'm probably going to end up reiterating a lot of the points I made in my video on Volume 1, because that was essentially a complete breakdown of Volume 1. Although, I will have extra context from having actually watched the anime at this point, so it'll be a little different. But yeah, so I think it'll be easy enough to kind of just jump into, so that's what I think I'm going to do next week. I'll figure out exactly what I want to do as far as structurally, although there's probably going to be some trial and error as well, because, again, I don't know how much I'm going to read before I start commenting. I don't know, again, what the balance is going to be, because there are some things that are going to require longer passages to be read for my points to make sense. I'm specifically thinking there's one moment in Volume 1 that's really cool that does... so again, for those of you who haven't watched my Volume 1 video, I get like real fucking nerdy in that one, where I go like full on like dissecting the word choices and stuff like that. And I remember there was one bit I noticed where at least the translator, I don't know if Rifujin did it, but the person who translated that enjoyed playing around with the time of the narrator, like what point in time the narration is taking place, where like with Rudy, it's happening in the moment most of the time. There are some scenes that are talking about like, something that happened in the distant past. There's one scene with Paul where he's talking like it just happened and he's just going over it again. And then there's, it plays around with it. It doesn't have a consistent thing every single time. But I remember there was one moment where Rudy was kind of doing some narration to just explain some stuff to the reader. He goes into it, and it's in that distant past perspective. Like he's talking about things after the moment, like after it already happened, and that's when he talks about it. And then Paul snaps him out of it because he's in the middle of swordplay training, and then he shifts back to the present time type of speech. That it's such a nerdy thing to notice, such a little a little detail in the writing about like the technicalities of the writing. That's the kind of stuff that I really am excited about, but you need like an entire passage to be read before that becomes clear. So again, I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to do things. I don't know. I think most likely we're just going to wing it, because I don't know. As much as I do pride myself on a lot of preparation and thought and stuff like that, sometimes you just got to say fuck it and go for it. But yeah, so since most of the people who actually watch my streams seem to want the light novel analysis, I think that's what we're going to do. Unless it just completely fails, crashes and burns, doesn't go well. I don't know. And if it continues to do well, it'll last us until the season 3 comes out, and then, or at least until season 3 is finished, and then we can jump back to that, because I am very eager to see that, but I'm also, again, kind of eager to go back to the books, even though it's going to take a long time to get through the books. But yeah, so that's where I'm going to cap it off today. My voice is getting a little bit tired. I feel like if I talk too much more, I'm going to end up hurting myself, which is not a good thing. Yeah, I will also have to come up with extra things to protect my voice, since I feel like while the streams are going to probably be a comparable length, I'm going to be talking a lot more, and I have damaged my voice in the past from talking too much. Interestingly enough, it was back during like an early attempt at content creation, like before I started my, I think it was before I started my current YouTube channel, or it might have been right soon after. I tried to do something on a stream where I talked constantly, and the next day I literally couldn't speak. So that was a fun time. So yeah, I'll have to figure something out. I'll have to take preparation to protect my voice. That should be a lot of fun. And for those who are curious about yesterday's stream, I will say it should be viewable. Let me just quickly double check, because it definitely did have some copyright issues. So sorry, my thing is being a little slow right now, but yeah, it did have some copyright issues, so it was blocked for quite a while. Now it is mostly viewable. I think there's one country it is still not viewable in. Excuse me for 1 second. I'm just gonna check on my end. Yeah, unfortunately the stream is slowing down my internet connection a little bit. Okay, so yeah, it's partially blocked, but that means, yeah, it can't be seen in some territories. Let's see. Okay, yeah, okay, I think it's the same claim. It just got re-caught, so see details. Yeah, okay, so yeah, if you're not in Russia, you can see the stream from yesterday. However, I did have to cut out a lot of the Dragon Ball portion of it, because that got, the same kind of audio claim that Fist of the North Star did. So most of that is going to be cut out, but most of the rest is still viewable, even though I'm not making any money on it. I don't really care about that since it's unlisted anyway. So I do apologize for anyone who missed the Dragon Ball portion and wanted to see it, but I can only do so much. So yeah. But it is viewable, except unless you're in Russia from now on. So, and I'm going to work on getting it viewable in Russia as well. So yeah, I hope that answers any questions anyone has. Yep. So I'm going to cut it off here. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate all the chatters. I appreciate the enthusiastic discussions on this last couple episodes. It was as always, it was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. You just got back you kind of just got back at the very end. Yeah. So yeah. And Alan, the one thing that is relevant that you missed, I'll mention next week. We're going to start doing the light novels. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but we're just going to wing it. So yeah. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate everyone, whether you commented or whether you chatted or not. You're always appreciated. Lurkers are important as well. Don't think I don't value you. I appreciate you guys. And I especially appreciate anyone who voted in the poll, because that actually, it's important. I want to know what the people who actually watch my streams think of it. And and tomorrow, yeah, what is tomorrow? Tomorrow is, it's Ranma 1/2. So that's what I'm very excited for. So I've heard very good things about it. Yeah. So that'll be it. So yeah, see you guys tomorrow. If you're coming by, if you're coming by tomorrow, if you want to watch the daily streams, which are just going through his anime from the 60s to modern day. Tomorrow we're watching Ranma 1/2 at 7 p.m. Eastern. So